you got some of the most high-profile prisoners in the world there. You know, we had the Yorkshire Ripper, we had Ian Huntley, we had the Moors murderer, we had Steve Reeves and the Rooker choker, who a lot of people don't seem to know, murdered 4 people. There's like 400, maybe 450 prisoners on the VP side of Frankland who, you know, only a handful get in the media. All of them have done some of the most horrific things you could possibly imagine. I remember we walked on the wing and like the SO at the time was like, right, don't go on the 3s because it's really bad up there at the minute, so just sort of leave them be. We'll go up there, we'll all go up there together when it's bang up. On the 1s, you've got a few you need to watch out for. He's just punched Ricky or whatever. And you're like, all right, no bother. Where's the rest of the staff? He's like, right, Mrs. upstairs in the office. Good luck, lads. I remember I took a prisoner to hospital who'd murdered his next door neighbour, put her body in the freezer, essentially. And there's no way to say it without getting too graphic. But he was, while helping her family search for her, he was getting her body out of the freezer, warming her up with barbecue tongs that he was heating on his oven, and then having his way with her dead body. And that 1 on 3 was horrendous. I remember turning up and there was just prisoners and staff fighting everywhere. And I looked up to the 3's landing, the top floor, and there was a prisoner stood there with proper stabber in one hand and like an extension cable or something in the other. I remember him like sort of swinging, like going to swing with a knife in his hand, and I hit him in the leg with a baton. He'd recently had surgery and he was like forcibly going to the toilet in his underwear so we could get the nurses to change him.
No.
Yeah. I remember I was handcuffed to him and I'd hear him like, and then just like a horrible noise. Like,
you were handcuffed to him?
It was awful. Somebody's got to be though.
What?
There was a prisoner in Wakefield who was paralyzed from the neck down. A prisoner ran in and just started stabbing him. Yeah. But because he was ahead and absolutely nothing below it, he didn't know what was happening. So he was just sitting there like, what are you doing? What? Stop it. What are you doing? Which... But he was on a constant watch, and he'd gotten the spoon and he'd gotten the back end of it and got in behind his eye and popped it out, and he'd squeezed one eye and then he'd done the same with the other.
He'd popped them out, had he?
He'd popped his eyes out so they were just outside of his like, eye socket.
Oh!
And he just squeezed them. He did, I think he had about 10 hours of surgery trying to save his eyesight. By the time we'd left, about 2 weeks later, he said he could see shapes and colours, but that was it. Everything else was just like pure blackness.
Bloody hell. We have got Matthew Burch, former UK prison officer, telling his story for the very first time at length. He has been on Sky, etc. Brilliant speaker, but incredibly hard-hitting stories. And many of the prison officers we've had on the channel, it's been historic. But Matthew was in the system as recently as 2023. Worked at 4 prisons: Franklin, Home House, Woodhill, and Wakefield, Monster Mansion. And he's been amid some of the most horrific offenders. While he's in there, they were on TV or in the media, the horrific stories of what some of these people were doing. And he gives an idea of how messed up and degenerate the whole prison system has become under these scummo governments pretending to protect society, letting everything just disintegrate. Anyway, and you also house some of the grooming gang members as well where you were working. So it's going to be a fascinating one. So huge thank you for coming on, Matthew.
No, thanks for having me. It's good to get out of the house.
Before we get to the reasons why you joined the service, then just give us like a hard-hitting story just to let the viewers know what's going to come later on.
I was actually thinking about a bunch of different stories I could tell you, obviously building up to coming on. And it's weird being a prison officer because you get so desensitized to the level of violence and danger and just sheer brutality, to be honest, that you see within the prison. And there's times in the past when I've thought I've been telling stories that I think are funny, and then the people I'm telling them to have never been in the prison system, never seen that kind of thing, and they're looking at me like it should be traumatizing.
It's the same gallows humor the prisoners have.
Oh yeah. Humor will carry you through the job. But the one that really stuck out for me to tell that just showed the breakdown of the prison system was there was a weekend day, Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember exactly which, and I was running the house unit at the time. I was the SO on there, and all the SOs, when we come in the morning, got pulled in by the CMs and told that there's no staff today, basically. There's no response. So if you're going to press an alarm bell, make sure it's for a good reason. Anything else, you just have to let it slide today. I remember asking at the time, I said, well, do we need to be unlocking? Do we need to be getting everyone out if it's that bad? And they're like, yeah, we need to run the regime. Oh, all right, fair enough. And the morning went okay, but the prisoners very, very quickly worked out that there's about 5 less staff than there normally would be for the whole wing, for the whole house unit. And they were just running riot, they were drinking and smoking and whatnot. And mostly not too much trouble, but about 2-3 o'clock, I heard over the radio like a female officer screaming for assistance. So I went sprinting up to help, the only person. And I remember looking around thinking, I'm the only person here. But maybe there's people on the wing, maybe they're already there. And I burst onto the wing, turned left to the appropriate side, and I just saw a prison officer with a weapon still in his neck, with a prisoner standing over him, and he's holding it, and blood is just spilling out.
Like a shank?
What it actually was, we later found out, it was a soap box. Like, those plastic soap boxes that you hold your soap in, with a snapped pair of tweezers melted into it.
Oh.
I remember running on, like, just shouting, like, whatever it was, I can't remember. I'll probably get back. It's drilled into you that much.
Do you know what had led up to that incident?
As it turned out, I remember the prisoner. It was a spontaneous attack. The officer had only been in about 4 weeks, 5 weeks or so, and it was just as they were going on the exercise yard. He was rubbing down prisoners to let them out, basically, make sure they had no weapons, no anything they shouldn't. And as he'd gone down the arm, he'd sort of kneeled down to go down his hips and down his leg, and a weapon he'd concealed in his hand just went straight in the side of his neck. I remember shouting, "Get back," and running on and pulling the officer off, pulling him off the wing, and like screaming in the radio for assistance. And literally by the time I'd got back onto the wing, another prisoner had been stabbed, and the female officer who'd originally called for help had successfully managed to get the prisoner behind his door. I'd only been off the wing, off the actual unit itself for a minute, if that, trying to call for assistance and get somebody up to help this lad who'd been stabbed. So big shout out to her. I mean, she if she sees this, she'll know who she is. Absolute hero that day. And all the other prisoners didn't want to go back in the cells after that, as you can imagine. I'd called second response. I'd called all available. And I think after about 10 minutes, another 2 officers turned up to help us put the rest of the prisoners away. Took about half an hour to get them in the cell, except for the 6 who were standing in the showers going, look, you're not letting us back out. Yeah, there's no way we're getting back out, so we're going to have our shower.
So when you say spontaneous attack, so, we've heard people come on and say stories like some officer might be a bit arsey, so they'll target that officer, or a prisoner might have a problem with a particular officer. So there was nothing like that.
Nothing that I'm aware of. I mean, that jail was horrendously understaffed, and the staff that were there did work very hard. But
so it was combustible.
Powder keg, mate.
Yeah.
Absolute powder keg. Every day there was something. I believe it could have been me. It could have been any officer who just happened to be in that place at that time. And I think the prisoner himself had sort of later just said, yeah, anyone, whoever it would have been.
So when you come to a situation where he's got this weapon in his neck and there's the blood's coming out, what's the protocol from there?
I mean, protocol, first aid wise, is just try and make sure it doesn't bleed out. But protocol,
so you don't take it out?
No, don't take it out because it could be blocking an artery or a vein or anything like that. So if it had been taken out, could have taken everything else out with it, especially in the neck.
So you just got to compress it?
Yeah. And the other prisoner, I think he just limped off the wing. I think I can't even remember where he'd been hit. It was just, the image of the officer, is burned into my mind, and the rest of it kind of blurs. We called code red, staff officers, nurses came up to assist, and I think they were there long before the officers were. He ended up going back to work, which surprised me.
Did he?
Yeah, about 4 weeks into the job, and then stabbed in the neck, and then somehow gone back to work.
Did he come back a bit traumatised, or?
I didn't speak about it too much with him. I mean, I've seen him since playing football and having a bit of crack with him and that, but never brought it up with him.
Wow.
And I remember saying at the time, well, we're going to have to secure this because it's a crime scene, it's an attempted murder. And the call kind of came down. No, we're going to have to get the prisoners back out. What? What were you talking about? Like, somebody's just been nearly killed here.
Yeah.
They're like,
just another day in the office.
Yeah. And that's kind of, that was, I mean, if it was in different jails, that might have been enough to close down the wing for a week.
Yeah.
But I think it was closed for maybe an hour.
Yeah. So Matthew, you come across as just a likable, very calm person.
Kind of you to say.
What on earth, what was your life like before the services? What led up to you making this decision to go in this extremely dangerous environment?
I mean, it's kind of my background. I think when both my parents were coppers.
Yeah.
And at the time, there was a big freeze on recruiting for police. So I thought, well, I was in sales at the time. And I thought, well, I can go and give that a go. Because if nothing else, at least, it'll help me get a bit of an understanding, a bit of experience. And then I'll see if it's for me.
Yeah.
And it took 2 attempts. I think I first went for it when I was 18. So I was way too young. I had absolutely no life experience. And then a couple of years later, I had my first kid. And I was working in a job that, it pays the bills. But I think if you're a certain type of person, you can't do the sort of 9 to 5 office grind and just, talking and selling, and it doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean? You want to do something that, well, naively you think you're going to make a difference in. They teach you that in training. You go off and you do, I think it's a bit longer now, but you do 12 weeks, a week shadowing, 10 weeks of classroom based and your CNR, and then a week of shadowing again, and then you're live. So you do 12 weeks, and that whole time you're sort of told, well, you're going in to make a difference and you're trying to rehabilitate, and there's all these programs and courses, you're going to build a rapport, and what a load of rubbish, honestly. The only useful thing that you learn in training, I think, you learn your CNR and various protocols, searching and drugs protocols and stuff like that. The rest of it, you just have to get on and be the type of person to get on with people, build your rapport, get to know your prisoners, get to know the staff.
So you've got this protective instinct then, because your parents are police people. And your mum, plug for your mum's book. What's it called?
Oh, yeah, Confessions of an Undercover Cop. That's been out a few years now.
Almost 1,000 reviews on Amazon. We're going to try and get his mum on. So you've got this protective instinct from your parents.
I think so, yeah.
You're in your late teens. You're idealistic, thinking you can
change the world,
do something good for society. And then you apply to the prison service. And what kind of screening did they do on you?
Back when I first joined, I first applied anyway, you did an online assessment, which is basically English, maths, situational, like they'd put out like okay, you are entering a cell and the prisoner is complaining, what do you do now? And then, the next step would be, okay, the prisoner has now said that it's because of this, what do you do now? And it sort of gauge your responses and see if you're the kind of person that maybe would be right for that job. And if you get all that right, I mean, to be fair, if you fail the English and maths, you shouldn't be in there. It's like, right, you've got 4 prisoners, then 1 prisoner walks in the wing. How many prisoners are there now? And you're like, If you fail that, maybe you shouldn't be doing anything at all. And then you go down and do an assessment day, which I think they scrapped just before COVID. But the assessment day was essentially another English test and another maths test just to prove you weren't cheating. And then they'd put you in 5 different situations and see how you handle it, see how you respond. First time around, I just crumbled. I didn't know what to do, to be honest. I was at 80. I'd never dealt with, I grew up in a rough area. I've had a couple of scraps, and it's never been the easiest life, but I've never been in that.
Slow down. What were these situations then that you failed at? Can you describe them?
They had like 5 actors, and they'd get them in for the day, and the first situation you go into might be like, this prisoner has been caught fighting. Find out what's happened and deal with it accordingly. And then the next one, like, this prisoner is upset because he has no phone credit. Go in and talk, and all the actors would have. It wasn't so much scripted, but they had a loose plot to follow.
All right, let's go back to the fighting one. You go in. What do you say?
Oh, well, actually, the one where the prisoner's fighting, you go in, and the first thing the prisoner does, you like pick up like a ruler or a book or something, like smash it off the wall and just start screaming at you, and that you're very much judged on how you react to that.
How did you react?
I had no idea what to expect, and not really any idea what to do. I was just like, okay, well, if we could calm down, that'd be great. Why don't you tell me what's happened? And they're like, wow, there's swearing and shouting, saying racist things, and then you're supposed to pick up and say, well, look, racism is really frowned upon. You're not supposed to be racist. Obviously, we know you're not supposed to be racist, but when you say that, when you're saying that to a prisoner, in reality, it doesn't. It's not going to go down the same. So
Yeah. So it was a bit intimidating, these
yeah,
scenarios.
the first time around, I wasn't ready for it. If I went in then, it would have been an absolute disaster. And probably a good thing it was a couple of years later that I got in.
And did you have to go through those same scenarios?
Yeah,
But you were more prepared mentally.
Yeah, I kind of knew what was coming that time.
Did you have like a game plan this time?
A bit more, yeah. And I did a bit more sort of research and like what are they looking for and that kind of thing. And there was, you can't lie, there's loads of cheat sheets, and it was just a lot of it was just holding your nerve.
So this time when the angry prisoner came out, what did you say to him?
And I stood my ground and I said, I need you to get back away from me and stand at the back of the cell while you're talking to me, as if that's going to work.
And how did he respond?
He just did it. I was like, oh. And he said something racist. I was like, look, we can't use racist and abusive language. You carry on, I'll have to report you. In fact, I should report you for that. And he was like, I'm very sorry. I'm like, prison's easy.
What a turnaround.
I know. And then, depending on how well you do, you get put on a merit list, essentially. And whichever jails you sign up for, I think at the time, my options were Franklin, Durham, and Lone Newton. I put Franklin at the top, Durham second, Lone Newton third.
Did they have a fitness test?
They did. I mean, yeah, to call it a fitness test is almost an insult to people who stay fit. I think it was...
Bar's gone down on that over the years.
Yeah. I mean, I know when I joined, the bar had already dropped. It was 5.4 on the bleep test, which I think is 2 minutes and 44 seconds of jogging. It was, you stand for, I can't remember if it was 1 minute or 2 minutes holding a riot shield. It's 7 kilograms at a 45-degree angle. At the time, they did push test, pull test, and grip test, where you had to push for 33 kilograms, pull for 33 kilograms, and grip for 20, I think it was. And that was to test how well you'd be in one of those fights where all you do is push, pull, and grab. And I don't think anybody I know has failed that when I went for my assessment anyway. And then you do a hearing test and a visual test, but it's like, I think the hearing test is a woman who stands behind you and whispers in your ear, just like, tell me when I whisper. And you're like, I think you've that right now. And then you go to the other side and do the same. Like, yeah, you can hear perfectly. But I know that, I think a lot of that dropped off in COVID. I mean, you don't do an interview with your local jail or whichever jail you're going to, which I always think you should. But you're very much sent in with an idea of what to expect that doesn't translate into reality at all.
So what was your first position?
I was a prison officer at Franklin. I worked on B wing, which is a VP wing. Some of the worst people you could imagine to have ever existed are housed there.
So just for the American audience then, you've just said that you're a wing officer on a vulnerable prisoners wing, which is where people who've attacked kids and things like that go.
Yeah, sex offenders, prisoners who can't stay on regular wings because they're so heavily under threat or so debted up. Essentially the ones that if you put with the ordinary prisoner, they wouldn't survive it. And some of those people are, yes, some of the worst, most horrific sex offenders and prolific serial killers to have ever lived.
So, interacting with those people daily then, you've had a kid yourself by this point.
Yeah, I'd had my
How do you reconcile that? Remaining professional while knowing what they've done?
You've got to put it in the back of your head. Not so far away that you don't remember, but far enough away that it's not your overriding thought. Because Franklin really has a privilege because it's a high security establishment. It's a very settled jail a lot of the time. And the prisoners that are there for such long durations that a lot of them don't actually want to be causing mischief. And I mean, you've still got your lads who are doing drugs and staring at the pot and, willingly hit another prisoner to pay back a debt or whatever. There's all that kind of stuff. And there are very serious incidents sometimes. But it's not as day-to-day as a lot of other jails. And it's very well staffed, and the staff there are great. A lot of experience. Really looked up to the experienced staff at Franklin.
So a lot of officers described the first day as being quite intimidating, the atmosphere, the noise and everything. Did you're making it sound like it was really professional and you felt safe?
Professional is a bit of a stretch.
Okay.
I mean, there's loads of staff at Franklin, and a lot of them, they all know what they're doing. It's not like this case in a lot of these jails where it's just staff in and out the door, and then you've got staff who've been in for 6 weeks training the staff who were just starting, and it didn't feel like a dangerous place. I felt like a fish out of water because anybody would. And, I worked with staff who I thought were idiots, but I worked with a lot of staff who thought I was an idiot as well because I spent a lot of time making jokes. But
what were your actual duties then at this point?
I mean, when I first started, it was basically just turn up, count the prisoners, don't offend anybody, and watch what your colleagues are doing.
But you're walking through the runs and stuff.
Through the runs, what do you mean, sorry?
You go in, you're doing head count.
Oh, yeah,
past
yeah.
all the doors.
Yeah. You're just in. You're with prisoners for association. You're taking them down to workshops, education, a library, whatever. You're surrounded, immersed in the world of prison immediately. But Franklin's a very privileged place to do that, a very blessed place to do that, because the people you always have people with you, essentially, more or less, and the people that you're working with all know what they're doing, more or less.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast. It's a word from my sponsor, Shopify. When I started this podcast, there were a lot of things I had to figure out on my own. Algorithms, guest booking, marketing. I was a bit naive about what was involved, and as you get deeper into it, it starts to overwhelm your life. Finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything can be such a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands just getting started, such as my co-host Ron's Pokemon business. Get started with your own design studio of hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store to match your brand style. Accelerate your content creation. Shopify is packed with helpful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. Get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.co.uk/Shaun, SHAUN. Go to shopify.co.uk/Shaun, shopify.co.uk/Shaun. Link in the description if you're watching on YouTube. Thanks for supporting our sponsor. Back to the podcast. What were the challenges that arose?
I mean, at that point, the biggest challenge was trying to not make yourself look like an idiot, because you can escape a dangerous situation, or you can escape saying the wrong thing, but you can't escape a bad reputation. You absolutely can't. And then when people don't want to work with you, or don't want to be associated with you, or don't want their name tied with you because they think you're an idiot, or you'll do something wrong, or you'll get them in trouble, that to be honest was the hardest bit to begin with.
Because you're a new officer, and you've not learnt the ropes properly yet.
You've not just not learned the ropes, but you've been told that you've learned the ropes by going to college and being told what prison's like. And you kind of think, oh, well, so this is what prison is then. This is quite easy. But there's so many complexities. It's a community in and of itself. Just instead of, that person at the end of the street is a bit weird, or a criminal or whatever, everyone is.
So did the prisoners try to exploit your newness?
Oh, 100%.
How?
I mean, some of it should be a simple thing like, I normally get out at this time of day to do the laundry or whatever. And if you don't go and check, or you just do it, then they've got you, essentially. I mean, that's like the lowest bare minimum level of what a prison's going to get away with. They try and convince you that they know how things work and you don't, and they'll tell you. Obviously, there's huge amounts of corruption in the prison service. Not every prison officer, prison officers get a really bad reputation, particularly off the back of those videos that come out with that woman in the cell. And, I worked with a prison officer very briefly who was while she worked in the prison, was in a music video with a prisoner who had just been released. And she was like twerking and dancing on him and kissing him and that. And you just kind of think, well, maybe she shouldn't have been in the job. But there's always going to be some prisoners who are testing you and trying to see what they can get away with and what you'll do for them. And obviously there are prisoners who convince some prison officers to bring stuff in for them and be corrupt. But then, it's a terrible thing.
So what was the first danger you encountered?
I mean, there's only really an alarm bell there at Franklin at that time, because it was a very settled period. Once a week, once every 2 weeks. Sometimes you go 2 or 3 weeks without anything. And then a lot of the incidents were quite small. I think the first time I actually dealt with a prisoner hands-on where I had to be in physical danger was this prisoner who was about 63. He was an angry Scottish bloke coming back from getting his tea, and he started kicking off, and we restrained him, and I was kind of like, first restraint, and I looked down, and all his mash and beans and cheese was all over me, and everyone was laughing at me, and that was like my introduction into danger in a prison. You know what I mean? There's horror stories, and I've seen some horrible things. I've been involved in horrible things, but I'll always remember that as the first time. I mean, the first really, really dangerous situation that jumps to mind. There's two prisoners trying to cut each other. Ribbons came out of...
Cut each other with ribbons?
No, cut each other two ribbons.
Two ribbons! Sorry.
There was a big thing about that as well, because two craft knives had gone missing from one of the workshops, and it had been counted as there.
Yeah.
So whichever officer had counted that, I don't know. But two prisoners had clearly had some beef. I think it was actually a Scouse lad and a Muslim, and they just came out the cell, bang on the dot just after lunch, alarm bell straight away, and they were just cutting each other to pieces.
Were they?
Honestly, ridiculous. And that was the first like proper sight of there's blood everywhere, and they've got weapons and they could have killed each other. And
how did that make you feel, seeing all that blood?
Surprisingly, all right, to be honest. I mean, I don't know where you reconcile that within yourself, but it just kind of like, right, that's that. We deal with it.
How did you guys deal with that situation?
And the prisoners were separated and restrained. The thing is, when you press an alarm bell at Franklin, you've got about 150 officers in white shirts supporting you. Like, honestly, it's a sea of white shirts. You can't move for them. So it's a very, very privileged jail to that effect.
So they're cutting each other to ribbons, buttons pressed, and then loads of officers just come running in.
Descend on it, yeah.
Just like, these guys have got knives, but everyone just rushes in.
Yeah, pretty much trying to grab an arm, grab a head, trying to get them off each other. And look, I give prisoners a lot of credit, because, I mean, prisons run on goodwill, but for the most part, in that kind of situation, prisoners don't want to hurt staff. They've got a problem with each other. It's a strange place to have a straightener in the middle of the landing with weapons, but they weren't trying to hurt us either. They were trying to hurt each other. So I think when it came about that they'd been separated, they very, very quickly calmed down, and they weren't kicking off. I think that was probably one of the worst incidents that I personally saw at Franklin, and they just both got taken down to Seg. And
that's because of the level of damage they've done to each other.
Well, I mean, it's a bit different there as well, because there's enough staff and the facilities are there that if there is an incident, a lot of the time, if the prisoner's restrained, he just goes to the Seg.
Yeah.
Particularly if he's assaulted staff, or if it's a severe assault. I mean, straight to the Seg, yeah. And then they'll either find a space for them, or they'll try and use bits of intel that they've got to work out who can go back and who can't go back and where they can relocate to. But it was kind of chalked up to, this is high security prison. They're both long-term serving prisoners. 25 years.
So how long were you on the VPs for?
About 2.5 years, I think.
That was the first 2.5 years.
Yeah,
and that was all at Franklin, was it?
I was all at Franklin with little stints. I did a stint on detached duty at Home House, which was a compassionate detached duty, because my ex-partner's mother was in hospital at the time locally, so we were trying to figure out a way to sort of bridge that. Distance.
So during that 2.5 years, did you meet someone in the prison service that you?
No, that was
later on.
That was later on, yeah.
Okay, let's just go back to that first year then. What other notable stories have you got from that first year? I
mean, that first year, to be honest, not a huge amount happened. I mean, I did a week of nights in the Seg, and they just absolutely tortured me, the prisoners in there. They knew I wasn't a Seg regular, so they were trying to get away with everything. And I think, I started the week, I had 2 acts, both once an hour, and then by like day 4, I had about 11 acts, all 4 times an hour, so I just didn't sit down all night. And that was the first time I dealt with a prisoner who'd ligatured, who'd tried to hang himself from the pipes. So I was doing my checks, and he'd covered his obs panel, and I didn't really know what to do. It was the first time I dealt with that. So I just went around back in the exercise yard, and he covered his window as well with newspaper. So I called for assistance, because you can't open the door by yourself on nights in the Seg. Well, anywhere really, but we went in, and he'd made a hell of a ligature. Like he'd got the bed sheet and cut it into strips, braided it, and then just twisted it and twisted it and twisted it and twisted it. And the person who'd come to help is actually the CM running it, and he'd done, he was 30 years in the job. He's done thousands of these. So he knew what he was doing. He just went, all right, Burch, you can go and sort it out. I'll grab his legs, you cut it off. and I'd got my fish knife out the back, which is like a little, it's like a knife shape, like a safety knife essentially, and I just couldn't get it into the ligature to cut it. And the guy helped me, was calm. He said, just keep going, you'll get it. There's no stress. I was like shaking like mad and trying to you can see this prisoner like slowly going blue. And he's like, and I was starting to like really panic. Just like, to his credit, the CM was good as gold, really helped me out, really like, just stay calm. Eventually we did get through it. Just put him on the floor and he just went, and then tried to slap me. I was like, what are you doing? And then,
He tried to slap you?
Yeah. And then when I went and talked to him about an hour later, I was like, what are you doing, man? Are you all right? He was like, I thought you were going to come in a lot sooner than you did, to be honest. I was like, I had to wait. You could have died there. He was like, yeah. The reality that some of these kids are facing. He was only young as well. He was only about 22, 23.
Did you know his backstory?
No, he wasn't local to me. He wasn't like wasn't a regular prisoner of mine. I didn't can't remember what he was in for. I know he wasn't a VP, so he was in for a regular crime, but just clearly a young man with absolutely nothing to lose.
So that got your adrenaline up?
Yeah, a little bit. The first couple of times it gets the adrenaline up when you're dealing with that kind of thing, and then after that it just becomes so normal, so like every day, that you kind of forget that you're walking into like life and death situations.
So what was the next situation?
Oh, it's a really tough one. Very little actually happened. I mean, it was mostly just restraints. Prisoners fighting on the landing. I remember I ran into a prisoner's cell because they were fighting. Two of them were fighting with each other, but staff were there immediately. As far as Frankland goes, it was quite a safe time for officers. At that time, not a huge amount of stuff happened while I was there. Obviously, there's been some stuff in the news recently, but Frankland itself was quite a safe place. I think I'd only had about 12 restraints while I was there. Over the course of all told, about 3 years at Frankland. So not a huge amount, because then I went and did 9 months at Woodhill and got 99 restraints. In a way, I was like, how have I done this many? And in another way, I was like, I wish I got to 100 just for that.
So you said you got some, temporarily you went to another prison.
Yeah, I went on detached duty.
And why was that?
A call came out to help me. In the first place I went on detached was Home House. That was obviously to help me. That's a Cat C. Not a lot of problems there, to be honest, at that time. I know they'd recently come out of a really bad spice epidemic. And it was very different to what I was used to, because there was a lot less staff, but there was a lot less sort of tension around it as well. While there were some sort of more dangerous prisoners, a lot of it was drunk drivers and, assaults and car theft and stuff like that, whereas the prisoners I was more used to dealing with were high security. It doesn't make a huge difference in the case of how you deal with a prisoner, but it makes a huge difference in how they behave.
Which one did you prefer working at?
Franklin, to be honest. I mean, that was where I was used to. That was where all my pals were. I knew all the prisoners. It was a bit of a longer drive, but it was a lot of fun. I mean, 90% of being a prison officer at that time was just sitting around bored and making jokes, and then the rest of it was just dealing with stuff like little spats and it's weird. You got some of the most high-profile prisoners in the world there. We had the Yorkshire Ripper, we had Ian Huntley, we had the Moors murderer, we had Steve Reeves and the Rooker choker, who a lot of people don't seem to know, murdered 4 people. But there's like 400, maybe 450 prisoners on the VP side of Frankland who, only a handful get in the media. All of them have done a lot of them have done some of the most horrific things you could possibly imagine.
So let's go over those high-profile prisoners more slowly then. You mentioned the Yorkshire Ripper.
Yeah, Sutcliffe.
So did you interact with him?
A handful of times. I was with him. I was on a hospital bed watch, actually, about 2 weeks before he died. Because I remember I'd just come back from having COVID, and I actually had a week of holiday booked off for the week after. And I phoned the detail and I was like, look, can you cancel that week's holiday? Because I've just spent 2 weeks trapped in the house with my missus and we're going to kill each other. Like, honestly, we're driving each other up the wall. Like, yeah, no worries, we could use the help anyway. Went straight out on the bed watch, sitting with him in that state he was in. He'd not long had surgery, and the nurses gave him nothing. At one point a nurse came in and he went, "Oh, nurse, what's the day?" And she went, "Mind your own business," and just left. I was like, oh.
Just let me give some context then for viewers. So when I was a kid, this was one of the biggest stories in the whole of the UK, was the Yorkshire Ripper, Peter Sutcliffe. Basically, women were getting snatched. Some of them were ladies of the night. Some of them weren't. We interviewed the son of one of his victims. And one of the people that he did this to, he left the body outside of Jimmy Savile's flat, his apartment. And there's theories. Savile was pulled in as a suspect.
Think that's a coincidence now?
Well, they were best buddies in Broadmoor, weren't they?
Savile in Broadmoor? Oh, well, I mean,
Savile was running Broadmoor.
Yeah, he was helping, wasn't he?
And Sutcliffe was there. And they were together a lot in
I can't see that being a coincidence.
It's really strange. So Savile was brought in as a suspect, and there's a theory that the body was left outside Savile's flat as an offering to him as well.
You think an offering? I think it.
Yeah.
Maybe they just got lazy when they're taking him out of Savile's flat.
Well, it's a really dark, strange story. And I was a kid, and I was seeing this all over the news. And when they finally got him, I think at one point he left a body, and he came back and had carnal relations with it and stuff. He revisited bodies and stuff like that. Anyway, they eventually got him, and he said that God had made him do it. Remember, that was the big headline at the time.
I mean, what did he get convicted for? 17 murders?
Was it?
I think so, yeah. I think it was 17 he got done for.
So when you're in the presence of someone like that, then, does the reputation kind of like, just start to get a bit, the hairs are standing up on the back of your neck thing?
To an extent. I mean, it's different to talking to somebody else. I suppose it's like meeting somebody famous, but you know that you've heard horrible things about them, or you've heard horrible rumors or horrible things that they've done, and you're trying to talk to them like a normal human, but in the back of your mind you're just like, I know what you did, I know what you've done. But that feeling became so, like, again, almost normalized, because you're dealing with people who've kidnapped and assaulted children, and I remember a prisoner who I was talking to once on a key worker session. Actually, it was one of the few times I nearly lost my temper because of a previous crime. And I was talking to him, and he'd murdered his partner, and he'd beaten her to death with a baseball bat, and then stabbed her multiple times with shards out of a mirror. And what he was like, I was sitting there trying to say, okay, so what do you want? What do you hope to get out of your time on this wing? What do you hope to do? What jobs are you interested in? What education do you do? That kind of thing. And all he wanted to talk about was how he was innocent, and she'd actually had the baseball bat, and he tried to take it off her, and she swung back and hit the mirror, and glass shards had landed in her neck, and now he was getting the blame and all that. And you're just like, just stop talking to me about this, because I can't deal with that kind of thing. And then he starts talking about other people's crimes. He's like, it's not like I'm him. He had somebody locked behind his fridge for years, and he was only getting her out to do her. And I was like, please stop talking to me, because I have to put this stuff out of my mind to work here. But Sutcliffe was a weird one in the way that he sort of acknowledged what he'd done. But I remember one time he was walking to healthcare, he was going with a nurse, and a lot of prisoners were shouting out the windows, because healthcare is like a mixed place. You got your VPs and your regular prisoners, and that's the only place they ever slightly interact, but you still keep them away from each other. You're close to see each other through glass. And they're all shouting like, nonce, nonce, that kind of thing at him. And he turned and he goes, I don't know why they call me a nonce. I only killed them. And you're just like, how is that your mentality?
Wow.
You know what I mean? How can you think that that's like...
Wow. So with NordVPN, you can watch my Sons of Ecstasy documentary if you're in the UK, even though it's only available in America, using the Quick Connect. See, I've got it on my phone right here. Plus, as you know, I've been hacked. I've lost my YouTube channel multiple times. NordVPN protects you from multiple types of assault. You can become safer online with a single click. Stay safe from scams, phishing, and malware with Threat Protection Pro. Never stop with the fastest VPN on the market. Threat Protection Pro has protected hundreds of millions of people from attacks. Someone sent me an email pretending to be a sponsored ad, and I clicked on it, and it was a phishing attack, and that's how I lost my channel. I wish I had Threat Protection Pro at that point. If the hackers have got your info on the dark web, Nord will monitor it for you and alert you. So you can get 4 months extra on a 2-year plan at nordvpn.com/Attwood, ATTwood. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/Attwood. Link is in the description box if you're watching this on YouTube. Thank you for supporting our sponsor. Back to the podcast. I guess everybody has to justify their own behaviour to themselves somehow.
You know what?
It's like hierarchies even amongst the different types of people who do crimes to women and kids, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing because I think the morals of prisoners can be a bit flexible sometimes, because the whole VP thing is to keep people who've done those crimes away from assaulted women, assaulted kids, etc., away from the general populace. But then sometimes you meet prisoners who were maybe high up in a certain gang or a religious gang or something like that who'd committed serious sex offences, but because of their sort of untouchable position, they weren't VP'd. They were just regular, top-end prisoners.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard some prisoners have told me that if a sex offender comes in and converts to a certain gang, that gang accepts them and protects them. Is that true? Or
to an extent, but generally speaking, if they were converted before they went in, or if they had previous affiliations with somebody who was already high up in that gang, then they're just kind of accepted. So I think that's kind of where the whole VP system falls apart for me, because I think your morals about if you're going to kill somebody because they're a predator of some variety, that should stand regardless of their position. But it's a funny one that way.
Yeah, in America, it's really hardcore convict justice. And all right, so Sutcliffe then, you're speaking to him. He's near his death.
Yeah.
So was he more of a doddering, harmless old man at this point, or did he still have an element of danger?
He had no element of danger, but he was still disgusting.
Like the things he said?
Not even just the things he said, but the things he was doing. I think he was sort of enjoying. I mean, he was obviously in a lot of pain. He'd recently had surgery, and it was a weird time, COVID. You'll remember, nobody knew if it was going to kill you or not. But I don't know how to say it without swearing, really. But he was forcibly going to the toilet in his underwear so he could get the nurses to change him.
No, I've never even heard that before.
No, I think that's relatively common to an extent.
Is it?
Yeah, particularly down there.
So he was pooing his undies.
Yeah, and you'd
just to get the nurses to come and change him.
I remember I was handcuffed to him, and I'd hear him and then just a horrible noise, and he'd be like, "I've done it, I've shit myself."
What, he just do it where he was stood?
He was lying in bed.
In bed?
Yeah, and
you were handcuffed to him.
It was awful. Somebody's got to be though.
And he shat himself on purpose.
Yeah.
What?
But then he'd ask the nurses questions, and they'd just giving him
obscene questions.
No, just any questions, and they're just giving him no answer, nothing. They're like, "Mind your own business." They'd be like, "Well, what time is it? Mind your own business." "Oh, which hospital am I in?" "I'm not telling you." Just hostile. The nurses were hostile to him. That's one of those weird sort of instances where profile carries you more than anything else. Because I've gone to hospital. I remember I took a prisoner to hospital who'd murdered his next door neighbour and put her body in the freezer, essentially. And there's no way to say it without getting too graphic, but he was, while helping her family search for her, he was getting her body out of the freezer, warming her up with barbecue tongs that he was heating on his oven, and then having his way with her dead body. And he eventually got caught, and this all came out. And if you Google him, you can't find it. So how is that less high profile than what other prisoners have done? Like the Ian Huntley story about the two girls that he'd kidnapped and murdered, and he walked about like he was somebody. He walked about like he had a bit of clout because he was, I've got a reputation, I'm a bit famous. Every now and again, somebody new would sell a story because he'd tell them to get his name back in the papers.
Let's put this in context then. For viewers who are not familiar overseas, who is Ian Huntley?
So he's the Sohn murderer, isn't he? He kidnapped. It was very, very high profile when I was young, and that's burned into my memory as well. The photo of those two girls in their Man United tops. And he'd kidnapped them, essentially severely sexually assaulted them and drowned them, I believe he did. And then he buried their bodies. And he was another one who was helping the media and going on telly and saying he was helping search for them and please come home and all this kind of stuff when he'd done that. And he was at that prison. He was an enhanced prisoner
Which prison was that?
That's at Franklin. He was there, and he was an enhanced prisoner. And,
what did he look like?
Like a slightly chubby old man, to be honest.
And did he have an aura of danger about him?
Nah. I mean,
The cowards, aren't they?
yeah. I mean, they don't. There's no like people say, "Oh, I bet it was horrible working with them." I bet you was. You're not scared around them. There's no like fear to be had around someone who kills kids.
Just despicable cowards.
Yeah, they are. I mean, there's no justifying the behaviour. I mean, to an extent, I've worked with thousands of prisoners, hundreds of prison officers. I can understand committing murder because your wife has cheated on you. I wouldn't do it.
Like crime of passion is
I can
quite
understand
common.
that.
Yeah.
I can understand.
The motive, yeah.
I can understand killing for money. I can understand
Yeah.
accidentally killing somebody in a fight. I can understand all of those things. These part of criminal lifestyle. I don't condone it, but I can understand how it can happen.
Yeah.
It's an occupational hazard. I mean, you know yourself. You worked in a dangerous trade. Those things come with associated danger. I mean, was there not a point? Did you have a hit on your head or something? Allegedly.
When I was working in importing the disco biscuits. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There was all kinds of crazy situations.
Yeah. So I mean, so you'll know that it's occupational hazard of crime. Those people do it because they like it. They enjoy it. They get something out of it. That's a very
Which is
different.
just monstrous, isn't
It's
it?
a very, very different kettle of
So
fish.
my question should be not, is there like an element of danger when you're in the room with them? My question should have been, is there an element of like some kind of deranged mental illness energy that comes off them?
Some of them, yeah, definitely. You know, there's some people that you'd look at and you'd think, I understand why you're here. I would cross the street to avoid you.
Is it in the eyes? Is it the way they move?
Just everything, like something you can feel it. You look at them and you're like, nah. I get it every now and again, even now that I'm not working it. I look at people who I know, I'm not associated with, but I see somebody out and you just think, I'll keep it away from you.
You can sense that.
A little bit,
twistedness.
yeah. A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't, you know, I'm not saying that every person that you get that feeling about is a horrible
Yeah.
predator, but
you got the radar for it now.
yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was weird. Some of the people that you spoke to. I mean, there was one on Channel 4 a few years back called Benjamin Field, and what he'd done, he'd basically manipulated, allegedly, I think three different elderly people in the community. One a priest, a male priest, and then an elderly woman. And he basically poisoned them and got them to leave him stuff in the will. And absolute sociopath, very intelligent guy, but absolute no remorse. No sort of understanding or inclination that what he'd done was wrong. He just sort of went, yeah, I've been a bit of a naughty boy, haven't I? And just absolutely, almost like dead behind the eyes. But you could carry a conversation with him. And he was actually quite a smart guy. And, you know, every now and again, you know, he might say something that was actually quite funny. And then you sit there and you go, ha, three elderly people are dead because of you. And I'm having a normal conversation, like you're somebody I might meet at the park. Do you know what I mean?
Wow. I've got questions still more about Sutcliffe and Huntley yet. So, when you were chained to the Yorkshire Ripper and he shot himself,
Yeah.
did you have to get out of the way at that point, or are you still chained to him and
No.
they got to clean him up while you're chained to him?
No, you stay chained to him.
Oh, so you had to watch.
Yeah.
Or do you just turn away because it's just so disgusting?
It's one of those things where you kind of half turn away and you're half like,
Oh!
you know, like a car crash.
Oh! So what did they do? They just get in there with wipes or something and hose him down?
Basically, yeah, like, you know those little cardboard toilet things, lift them up.
Cardboard toilet things?
Yeah, you know, like when your missus is giving birth or whatever, and they have those little like bowls essentially that they put under.
Yes, yeah.
That kind of thing, and then they just wipe and change.
Oh, and is he getting off on that?
I don't know what he was doing. I don't know what he got out of it.
Yeah.
Some kind of. I think it was probably a power thing. Even cuffed, you're still doing this.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a despicable man. He was a very strange looking man. He had like an afro that went all the way around his head and face with his beard and that.
The Ripper did, yeah.
Yeah, and he was just a really strange guy. And I remember there was 3 of us there, and one of us had to be cuffed him at all times. And I ended up actually taking a break and swapping and I was chatting because there was 2 coppers there as well because of how high profile he was in case somebody wanted to come and do him in. We were just sitting there chatting and we're like, how did we get into this job? Like, honestly, what are we doing here? One of the most horrific, prolific serial killers of all time. And we're handcuffed to him trying to help him get better.
And he never talked to you in a normal fashion. He was always just rude and asking weird questions.
I mean, he never really deigned to talk to me too much. I mean, I didn't spend a huge amount of time with him. He wasn't on my wing. He was so high profile and relatively well behaved that he just spent his whole time on A wing, which is the enhanced VP wing.
So would he have his own cell?
Yeah, of course. Franklin, everyone's own cell.
And would there be attempts on his life?
I don't remember there being attempts on his life. I know there was a few on Huntley. I know he got slashed. And
While you were there?
that was shortly before I arrived.
So how did they access him?
I can't remember the details. I think it was during a workshop. I think it was during workshop moves. He got slashed across the neck, and then he also got... Did he get acid thrown in his eyes? I don't remember the exact details on that one. But he was I think he got slashed, and then the weapon got thrown onto the sort of walkway cover, so it wasn't recovered. And I think he sold his story to the newspapers just shortly afterwards.
So he survived those attempts.
I tell you
and just capitalised on it.
For whatever reason, you can't kill VPs. I've seen, there was a prisoner who got stabbed about 17 times in the paint workshop while I was at Frankland. And I did, so much overtime on his hospital bed watch that he paid for my holiday that year. And if I'd been stabbed 17 times with a paint chipper, those it's like a triangular shaped blade. He got stabbed 17 times in the side and in the neck. How do you survive that? Honestly, how do you survive that? If someone could explain it to me, I'd love to know.
You guys must have given him good aftercare to stop the bleeding.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone rushed directly to that. To be fair, they probably would have done. They did. You don't think about the crime or the person. You just think about someone's hurt in front of me. I'm going to help them.
Yeah. Wow. So, all right. So Huntley then, like you said, these guys get out and do workshops and stuff.
Yeah.
Would the Ripper be doing workshops, or would he not? Is he too?
I think he was just too old for it. I don't remember him ever associating off A-wing except to go to healthcare.
So does he just pass the day in his cell and
with painting and watching TV and whatever else? They've all got pastimes. Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, a lot of them do get into things like painting and music and poetry and
what about Huntley?
He used to kind of walk about like he owned the place. He did a bit.
Oh
yeah,
my God.
He was a wing cleaner. He's never someone. I was never on A-wing too much, so I didn't associate him with a huge amount. I remember he got dropped in the segregation unit, restrained in the segregation unit by a colleague of mine.
For what?
Tough question. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't like to speak for somebody else, but I'm sure it was very well merited and necessary.
There must be some officers who've got it in the back of their heads. I ain't going to be professional with this guy. I'm going to teach him a lesson. Did you ever see anything like that? No names. No names.
I have sometimes had to turn away from things that I thought if my name is associated when this comes out, I'm going to be out of a job.
Yeah.
I remember there was a prisoner who needed to be taken off the wing, but he never did anything to justify it to the staff. He was causing a lot of problems and getting drugs onto the wing and causing issues and disrupting the general ambiance who was there. And I remember an officer that I knew going to different prisoners to gather the supplies and then using a toasty maker to fashion a homemade shiv out of a toothbrush and razor blades, allegedly, which then were found in that prisoner's cell. And he was restrained. But when you're dealing with sex offenders who are coming in and causing problems, it's very difficult to feel much sympathy for them.
Yeah.
But I kept enough away from that kind of thing to...
So is it true there's a hierarchy then? For example, offenders who've harmed babies are at the bottom, but if you've harmed like a teenager, then you're higher up in the hierarchy.
When you say hierarchy, do you mean specifically for the VP wings? Because
yes, for those adults who harm kids.
There is still to an extent, but it's very different in that kind of environment because they can't really judge each other too much. They're all in for the same thing, and it's not so much a kid. What you got to bear in mind is when you're up on the higher end wings, like on the drug dealers, gang members, that kind of thing, there's a bit more clout, and there's people who won't associate with each other because they're from different gangs. And when you're talking about sex offenders, of course they want to associate with each other. They want to tell each other the stories.
And is that just are they just networking basically?
I think there's a fair amount of that, yeah.
Sharing tips and stuff.
Before we talked about grooming gangs, before the UK had grooming gangs, we had PL rings, and it was it's always been a thing. Always been a thing. It's horrendous. There was one in Hartlepool where I'm from, which was came out years and years after it happened, where there was 4 men who were just abusing teenage boys. and one of them worked in a funeral home, and there was questions raised about what he was doing at that funeral home with those bodies, and you just think, what? You know what I mean? Like, how is this still happening? How do you find 4 people of a like mind, especially the days before the internet? How on earth do you bring that up? I mean, if you were that way, how do you bring it up to your friend? Do you know what I mean? Like, who starts that conversation? Now, you can find it so easily if you want to. It's so easily accessible to find people like that, and
because of the internet.
Yeah, associate with those kind of people because of the internet, because of WhatsApp and various other, I don't want to advertise methods, but various other ways to get together. I mean, was there not I'm not sure how well known it is, but I mean, there was a group found with those 70,000 members only recently, they were abusing their wives and kids and sharing tips on how to do it. There was a really good bit of police work. You can look it up. I can't remember. I think it was maybe New Zealand. There was a guy who ran a website with thousands and thousands of members, and to get onto the website, you had to prove that you were doing those things to children.
Oh my God.
And he always opened every message with a distinct, it was like Hayes or something like Heyas, and the police managed to track down through various different like social media and posts that this guy had put on who it was just from that word, broke into his house when the website was still running and just took over, and they arrested hundreds of people for it.
God, absolute animals.
It's horrendous, man. I've got kids. When you start working in that world, you think, you start to think everybody is like that.
We're the same because we've interviewed so many survivors and covered so many dark stories. Like me and my partner, we're scared to let our baby go anywhere. We're like terrified. We're like, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you actually try and crunch the numbers in your head, because they say, something like, I can't remember what the exact figures are now, but a few years back, it was like 1 in 10 cases makes it to court. And something like 4 in 10 of those cases will secure a conviction. So how many are actually happening? If there's, I mean, say you've got 97,000 odd prisoners in the UK. I can't remember the exact number of those kind of prisoners. I think it's about 30,000. It's about a third, I think. So if 1 in 10 make it to court, and 1 in 10, and these are just the ones we know about, how many people actually is it?
2 of my podcast guests, Lee Marvin Hitchman and his partner, went to London with their baby, and someone tried to snatch the baby.
That's crazy. Eh? How do you keep your head in that? How do you not kill someone in that situation? Like, if you think someone's going to try and you okay, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Somebody can.
Well, they were professionals. There was 2 of them. One distracted one, and one went for the other. And as they realised what was happening, they realised they'd realised, and then they just disappeared like that, like professionals.
Well, they are now, aren't they?
Yeah. Anyway, going back to your high-profile prisoners. Then there was one whose name rhymed that we didn't cover. The something clicker or something.
Oh, the Roker Choker.
The what?
The Roker Choker.
Roker Choker.
Yeah, it's from Roker near Sunderland.
Roker near Sunderland.
Oh, it's part of Sunderland, I think. Yeah, he was. I think he got 41 years.
What was his backstory?
He came up in Sunderland in, I think it was the 80s, 90s, and he was a young gay man with obviously a lot of problems and didn't want to acknowledge that he was gay, and he ripped, I think it was 4 different boys under the age of 16, murdered them and set their bodies on fire. And he's had a number of different names, but he was on a long, long sentence. But I remember talking to him, not a huge amount of time after I'd been in the job, and he was like, I'm not bothered about anything. I'm never getting out of here. I know I'm never getting out. And I don't know whether that was acceptance of like what he'd done was wrong, or just acceptance of the fact that no one's going to let out.
Do you know why he set them on fire? Was that to destroy evidence?
I'd imagine so, yeah. I'd think so. I think.
Do you know how they caught him?
I think he kept going back to a few of the bodies, and they kept finding different little bits of things he was leaving or taking. Or
like Sutcliffe was going back to. Why would they go back to bodies? It's crazy, isn't it?
I could not put myself into that mind to tell you how they work.
Yeah.
You know, some of the people you're talking to and deal with. I mean, there was a big bloke called. I'm not going to say his name actually, but he was from like Manchester. He was huge. He was about 6'5", well, muscular guy. Usually okay, didn't really cause much bother. And then you read his page 1, like his charge sheet basically, and he'd sexually assaulted severely and done some significant damage to like 3 different 13-year-old girls.
No.
And you just think like, there's no like profile for a predator. You can't say, if somebody said draw a predator, you'd probably have an idea in your head. It's probably changed in the last few years since the grooming gangs thing came out. But before that, you'd be looking at an older bloke, probably white, probably in his mid to late 40s, early 50s, dressed a certain way. And that was the image of a predator. But you can't put that image on all of them because it's such a wide variety. It could be anybody.
Yeah, because I remember when I was in the jail in Arizona getting transported to court, and we went past like a pod with predators in it. And I was looking at them. And they fit what you just described, like older white guys. Where I just come from, they were all like big guys with tattoos and everything.
Yeah.
And then the Predator pod looked like mild-mannered,
softly spoken.
They had what we call the 2000 glasses on.
Specs,
yeah, and no tats, and very different looking from the general population.
Yeah, I mean, if you looked at when you look at like the sort of top end prisoners, a lot of them come from sort of similar backgrounds to myself and a lot of the people that I used to work with. Come up in relatively deprived areas, bit of violence growing up. Maybe get into boxing or whatever, and then while you go down one path, they go down the other. So you can understand to an extent how it's very easy to get into drugs, into selling green or something like that when you're taking home £1,000 a week, or you can go work in Sainsbury's and cripple yourself doing 40 hours a week for 180 quid at the time. You know what I mean? So it's very understandable. But then when you look at the sort of VP population, you've got doctors, psychiatrists, musicians, famously, not famously musicians, but there are a few famous musicians in some jails I've worked.
Were there?
Well, yeah, I mean, there was him from, when I was at Wakefield, there was that...
Don't tell me Gary Glitter.
No. I can't remember what his name was, but he was in quite a big rock band.
Not Huntley. Not Ian Watson.
Yes.
That is one of the most evil... If his crimes are true, which I believe they are, this is some of the most evil stuff I've ever heard in my life.
There's some of the most evil people to have ever existed are currently in UK prisons.
Just context then, for viewers who are not familiar with Ian Huntley. He's in Ian Watkins. He was in a band called The Lost Prophets, was it?
It was The Lost Prophets. I kept thinking the Talking Heads. I was like, it's not
he's
that.
Out of Wales, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I think he was more Swit than Meat Size, were part of a network. He was protected earlier on. But he had super fans offering up their babies to him.
Yeah.
I mean, why, damaging a baby like that? What's going through your head? So how was he? Because he's been attacked a few times, hasn't he?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I think he got... anybody with money tends to do all right in a prison, but I think there was a few things. I know Wakefield runs a little bit differently.
Does he still have his money? Is that how he pays his security?
I mean, he still has money. I wasn't there long enough to get into the ins and outs of the sort of complex way that Wakefield works, but it's a very different jail, Wakefield, because they don't have a VP wing and a top end or anything like that, or mains prisoners. They have everybody mixed.
Right.
Which I didn't think was possible.
Yeah.
But there's such an overwhelming population of VP prisoners that it kind of works.
So have we done all the Franklin stories then before we go over to...
I mean, I think so. It wasn't a huge amount that happened there.
Yeah.
A lot of the time. I mean, there was obviously things happening. Every now and again, somebody would get punched. I remember, I got full of spice one time walking into a prisoner's cell. So it wasn't like huge levels of things, but there was always a capacity for the huge levels of danger. Obviously, we've seen recently, 10 years ago, with the 3 officers who got stabbed there. And the level of danger is always there. It's just a lot better managed, I think. There's phenomenal staff. I never worked with a bad SO or a bad CM at Franklin.
Yeah. So why the move to Franklin, aka Monster Mansion?
Oh, to Wakefield even.
I'm sorry, Wakefield. Yeah.
That was during COVID. That was only a short-term detached duty because, I mean, so many people, every time you got COVID, I'm not sure how it worked in other jobs, but we worked all the way through. But if you got a COVID positive test, you took 2 weeks off work. And anybody who had associated with you in that time took a test, and if they were positive, they took 2 weeks off work. So at one point, you had jails with basically about 4 people running them. You know what I mean? It was pretty bad. I was actually at the end of my Sutcliffe story. I'd just come back from having COVID. I'd had 2 weeks off, obviously cancelled my week holiday, went back on there, and they said, right, do a COVID test before you leave because you've been to hospital, come back positive, and you're going to have to go back home for 2 weeks. And then before I'd even put out my 2 weeks, Sutcliffe had died of COVID.
Sutcliffe had died of COVID?
Yeah. My family later said I killed him, but I think there's quite a few people claiming credit for that one. That was how but that's how I went to Wakefield, because they were so short-staffed because of everyone going off for COVID that I think it was me, 6 others. We went down,
Yeah.
and we were only there for 2-3 weeks, something like that. But I mean, in that time, there was a prisoner. Oh God, there was a prisoner who'd popped his eyes out. You know the plastic spoons. I don't know if you get them in American prisons. What's the cutlery situation?
We have a spork.
Oh really?
Yeah, so it's a plastic spoon fork thing. That's all we're allowed to have.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, UK prison, you a bit different. You get a set of cutlery, fork, knife, spoon, which I always thought was a bit crazy because they are hard plastic and are very easy to make into a weapon if you really want to. But he was on a constant watch, and he'd gotten the spoon and he'd gotten the back end of it and got in behind his eye and popped it out, and he'd squeezed one eye and then he'd done the same with the other.
Which prisoner was this?
I can't remember his name, and it's really annoying that it's escaping me.
He popped them out, had he?
He'd popped his eyes out so they were just outside of his eye socket.
Oh!
And he just squeezed them.
Oh!
And I remember I did a couple of escorts with him because weirdly enough, he needed some surgery. I think he had about 10 hours of surgery trying to save his eyesight.
Yeah, because I came across a prisoner who had been assaulted multiple times and feared for his life, and he ended up, when they came for him, going in and pulling eyes out twice. They left him alone after that.
I can imagine you would.
And he said that there's like a fluid that can come through from the brain. There's all kinds of things that can happen.
Bit of a complicated part of the face, yeah.
Yeah. So they might not just go back in snugly, might damage your vision, all kinds of things.
It was, it was clearly a psychosis. And there was a lot of talk that he was on spice. But
so he was compulsively doing that, was he?
Well, he'd been fine for his whole sentence, and then
got on the spice.
I don't know if it was spice or just his mind went or what. I mean, I think he'd murdered his partner and her mother, I want to say was the crime.
And was that on the drugs?
No, that was just him.
Bloody hell.
And
did you observe him with his eyes out?
Yeah, we had to take him to the hospital.
Does that freak you out?
It's weird because everyone always says, "Oh, did that not freak you out? Were you not scared going to work? Were you not scared when this happened and that happened?" And you're not really.
Well, describe what that looked like then.
It looked like a guy with like sort of not quite circular eyes anymore.
Could you see all the white of them out?
Yeah,
bulging out.
Yeah, it was a horrible image, and I think he had about 9 hours of surgery, and afterwards, about a week. By the time we'd left, about 2 weeks later, he said he could see shapes and colours, but that was it. Everything else was just like pure blackness. And I remember.
Oh, so he did lose his vision.
Shapes and colours. That's all he had left afterwards.
No. So had he pulled them out to the point where they were dangling off the optic nerve, or they were just pushed
they were like out of the eye.
Got yeah. Because they can come right out, can't they, when they're dangling?
Not that I've seen.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. You've seen it in films and stuff, but I've not seen that.
Yeah.
You hear, oh God.
So how was he treated with his blindness? Then does he have to go to like a medical facility?
No, he'll stay in. Well, I imagine he'll stay in Wakefield. I imagine he's still there, probably.
He's got to live with that for the rest of his life. He can't even see properly now.
There was a prisoner in Wakefield who was paralysed from the neck down, and you just think, why is that person taken up to bed? But it's because he was one of the most horrific people to have ever lived. You know what I mean? He'd done crimes so horrific that even just as a head, they didn't want him in the general populace.
So had he done the crimes and then paralysed himself?
Yeah, I think he was paralysed in prison.
By himself or the inmates?
I'm not sure in the details. I wouldn't like to say if I wasn't sure, but I know. I did hear a story about when a prisoner ran in and just started stabbing him, but because he was a head and absolutely nothing below it, he didn't know what was happening. So he was just sitting there like, "What are you doing? What? Stop it! What are you doing?" And I think he did about 12 weeks in hospital, which was ordinarily called a bed watch. For him, everyone called it a head watch. Which.
That's one of the craziest things I've heard as well. So he's just going, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Because he can't feel the stabbing.
He doesn't know what's going on. He knows that like he's being attacked.
Yeah,
but he's got no idea. Knife.
I'm just trying to visualize that. That's mental.
I know.
Did you have to arrive for the aftermath of that?
No, I think he was just coming out of hospital because I remember he came in. And I was like seeing this guy basically in a wheelchair, absolutely motorized. That other people are like pushing around and stuff, and you're thinking, why is he here?
Yeah.
Where's he been? Trying to get like some kind of like, give me some kind of context for this guy.
And was it because of the nature of his crimes that he was attacked?
I doubt it. Wakefield, a lot of them are in for the same kind of thing.
So yeah, I've spoken to some prisoners who, as part of their rehabilitation, they've had to sign something to agree to go to Wakefield and sign that they wouldn't attack the sex offenders and things like that. So it seems like there's sometimes quite a mix of prisoners, is there?
Yeah, I mean, we had somebody at Franklin who was gang affiliated, who I then saw at Wakefield and had a bit of chat with. And I was like, "How are you finding it here?" He was just like, "Just getting on with it. Just getting on with it till I get out of here." And I think a lot of them do just have to see it that way.
But some go to, and even though they've signed a thing, once they get around the monsters, they snap, don't they, and attack them.
You do hear of things like that. I think there are incidents there. Yeah, I mean, is it not Robert Maudsley who's there as well? He'd done something there.
Robert Maudsley, we had his psychiatrist on, Dr. Bob, phenomenal podcast. Watch that one, folks, because he'd been really successful with Maudsley. And then the government shut the program down, of course. But just to give the backstory of who Maudsley is, can you describe what he'd done?
From what I remember, because it's one that it wasn't a huge amount to do with me. I've seen him at Wakefield, but from what I remember, was he not from quite a rough background, had been abused as a child, then became a rent boy from the age of about 12, and then he stabbed a pedophile, I think. And then I think when he got into prison, he'd done a few more. I think the only people he's ever killed are sex offenders.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's one of those weird ones where you don't know whether he should be imprisoned or knighted.
He said there's going to be 2 or 3 short for the head count, didn't he? After he went on a spree of killing them. And then he went up to the guard and said, "There's going to be I can't remember
a few short.
A few short for head count." And they're like, "What do you mean? What do you mean?" And then he was classified. I mean, Dr. Bob said they tried to make him, to be the Hannibal Lecter of the UK prison system and showcasing him in this glass box.
They still say that. I mean, I've been to Wakefield. There is no glass box.
Isn't there?
No, I mean, you can Google it and it comes up with like measurements and stuff like that. And when I went there, I was like, "Oh, where's this glass box?" They're like, "Oh, you mean the gym downstairs?"
So did you interact with Maudsley then?
No, he's CSC. Basically like a super seg. He's the next level above a segregation unit, so pretty much only associates with the same officers, never associates with any prisoners.
But you heard of him at that time?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you go into any jail, you always look up who's there, just to see if there's anybody anybody with a bit of notoriety there.
And was he known to be behaving himself at that time?
Yeah, I mean, I had a bit of chat with some officers there, and they said he never really caused any bother, and he just sort of kept himself to himself. He was in CSC, yeah, but that's because he posed a risk to other prisoners, not because of the risk he posed to staff.
Did they put Charles Bronson in Wakefield?
I think Bronson's been in Wakefield. He wasn't there when I was there. He was at Woodhill when I was there.
Was he?
Yeah.
So you interacted with him?
A handful of times. He's a funny old guy. He was at Franklin as well, actually briefly while I was there. He's a funny old guy.
Yeah. He still looks really big, doesn't he?
Not so much now. I remember seeing him and thinking, he's not as... I mean, he's stocky, he's broad. You can see that he's had muscle. And I know he's still supposed to maintain his regime.
Yeah.
Of something like 1,000 push-ups a day, whatever it was. I can't remember the exact number, but it was a ludicrous amount. More than I've done this year.
Yeah. But he's getting old now.
Yeah. I mean, he's one of those weird sort of people because he's kind of glorified to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
And...
Did you watch the Tom Hardy movie?
I did. I didn't think it was great, to be honest.
It was a bit surreal, wasn't it? Like the way...
I mean, he's a very surreal guy. I mean, if you look at the things he puts out and poetry and the art and stuff like that, he is a very surreal guy. He's almost like a surrealist artist.
Yeah. Then he changed his name to Dali at one point or something.
Salvador Dali. Yeah. But I know.
I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, it was. It's one of those strange things where you can kind of. He's never, that we know of, like really killed anybody or done significant damage, but he has also harmed a lot of people. He's assaulted a lot of people.
A lot of staff members.
Assaulted a lot of staff.
Yeah.
I don't really understand why he's so glorified. I understand he's very talented, very, puts a lot of great artwork out. I can't really condone his behaviour, you know what I mean? I know a lot of people idolise him and think he's a hero, but I don't really understand why. Imagine if you worked at Tesco and every day you had to go in and there's some guy who just punched you for no reason, and then he just continued doing it, and everyone's like, "Yeah, you know what? He is actually sound, isn't he? Why?" from an officer's point of view, anyway.
Yeah,
But I mean, he's actually at the same time you can say that about a lot of prisoners, but he was actually quite funny as well. He used to sing on a Friday when Fish Friday was coming round, and he used to have a bit of crack with you, and he got on well with the officers. And then one day he just be like, right, I'm going on the yard, try and get me off. And
did he?
Yeah, he'd do stuff like that relatively often. Every now and again, something would be going off, or he'd be bored, or he'd have a parole coming up. I don't think he really wants to get out. I think he talks about wanting to get out, but I don't think he really wants to.
So if he goes to the yard and say, try and get me off, what happens next?
Staff get up, and staff get in the body armour and get the shield and restrain him.
Did you have to participate in that?
I think every time something like that happened, there'd be a list of people trying to get the name on that. Yeah, because it's
a war story. Then.
Yeah, there's a bit of clout, isn't there? Oh yeah, I restrained Charlie Bronson.
Yeah.
Well, nothing to do with me. Never got close enough.
And was he easy to restrain under those circumstances?
I've got a friend who thinks so. Considering, I said he was strong, but I think he's kind of past his punching out 10 officers at a time days.
Yeah.
But I think he got to a point, I think, where yes, he'd do stuff like that every now and again, but he's been bounced around the system for years and years and years. He's got notoriety, so he's a bit of a celebrity. But if he goes on a regular wing, somebody's going to chin him to be the guy that done Charles Bronson. If he comes out, can he come out?
Yeah.
He's done however long institutionalized.
Really institutionalized, a shame. So, all right. So Wakefield then. What other high-profile ones were there?
Those are the two that stick out for me. There's a lad there, I think it was called Oniachi. He's dead now. You've probably seen the footage of him where he was, I can't remember what jail it was in, but he'd assaulted staff with a frying pan. It was in the paper. The video was about 3 minutes long. And he assaulted staff with a frying pan, set loads of clothes on fire in the kitchen, and then you just suddenly see, I think it was about 100 prison officers, all in the riot gear, surrounding him when he was on the netting. And that was, he assaulted a few members of staff, and I think he'd nearly killed some. But I believe he's dead now. Heart attack, I think.
Do you know what his crime was?
Something violent. God knows. I know it was something violent. I can't remember what the exact crime was. I did look it up at one point, but it's kind of in and out.
We were talking about the celebrity prisoners, weren't we? See, we mentioned Ian Watkins.
Yeah. You
said there was a few others, did you?
I've been with a few prisoners. I mean, not all necessarily VPs who were musicians. I mean, there was sort of London rap scene, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but there's a lad called Mizzo Mack who was in the Harlem Spartans. He's had a couple of good songs out, and then the idiot pointed a gun at a police officer, which makes you kind of think, why have you done that? You're popping off, your career's starting to get going, and now you're doing minimum 6 years inside.
So how would someone like that be treated inside?
They get a bit of clout, they've got a bit of reputation. He's from the area, he's a young lad, he's talented, he's got a lot of listens. I don't even mind his music. I like that style of music.
Yeah.
It was a very weird thing, like listening to him on the drive down. I remember when I was driving with a colleague of mine who was his best man at my wedding, and he was telling me about this musician. He was, he's just been banged up, I was like, oh, really? Cool. Didn't think anything of it. And then I get to like House Unit 2 and he's on there, and you're like, oh, that's a bit strange.
What about violent situations at Wakefield?
I think the whole time we were there was only the one bell, like actual alarm bell, and it was as I was on the way out the door. Violence isn't really, and it's another one where there's a lot of staff, a lot of experience. Maybe it's just the Northern High Security.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of staff and a lot of experience, and good staff, really good staff there.
So is it Woodhill where it really kicked off then?
Yeah, every day, like beyond belief.
Every day. So what made you transition from Wakefield to Woodhill?
I mean, to be honest, I was at a bit of a weird time in my life at the time. I was sort of in a relationship that was dying. And
so you're in a relationship with an officer at this point?
No, I was still with my ex-partner.
Yeah.
And that relationship wasn't going well. And I'd been accepted into the police. So I was about 6 months away from joining the police. And they said, well, do you want to go on Detached for 3 months? Because Woodhill had put a call out, they're short of staff. And I was like, yeah, we are. Let's go, there's something different, because they are prolifically short on staff. It's one of those jails where 10 staff join, 8 staff leave, then 10 more staff join, then 8 staff leave, and then the 4 that stayed in the first place are all off sick because they've been punched in the face. It's a really tough environment. Really tough environment. And that the only reason I went down was because a bit of a chance to make some money, a bit of a difference, and a bit of a chance to sort of evaluate what I was going to do with my life. because I was in a relationship that I wasn't happy in, and God knows I wasn't being the best partner. But it just seemed far enough away that I could go and get a bit of a break, a bit of space, a bit more experience, and a bit of a busier jail. And you hear horror stories about Woodhill as in Franklin, because a lot of staff go on detached duty from Franklin because there's enough staff that they can, and the ones that go to Woodhill tend to come back. Like I remember a friend of mine, he went to Woodhill, and I think on day 2 he'd been knocked out on the Threes Landing, and you just kind of think, well, let's see how it goes.
So was there something attractive about going into the fire?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, there's that case of, yeah, look, I've been at Franklin, this jail with some of these horrific criminals that everyone thinks is the worst of all time. I've never really done that much. I've dealt with one incident at Height where a prisoner had gone over the railings with a ligature around his neck on Christmas Eve, and I didn't know you weren't supposed to touch them, so I just cut the ligature off. He's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I don't know. To be honest, I'm just kind of winging it at this point." And then he came down after about an hour. That was one thing I dealt with. I dealt with a number of hanging prisoners. I'd gotten spiced up by going into a cell with a prisoner on spice. I came out off my head. I was walking about like Conor McGregor. I was literally like, "Ooh," and like people were like, "What are you doing?" I had to go to hospital and get checked, and that was pretty much the extent. A few fights here and there, self-harm, a lot of self-harm actually, dealing with a lot of self-harm, constant watches. But that was, it didn't really feel like I'd been pushed, especially because there's such like strong staff around you to rely on. Like the people I worked with on B-Wing were like really, really good, and there's enough for you as well. So you're never actually pushed. So I thought I'll be nice to try and be pushed. And I remember we got there, turned up for work in the morning, and we came onto the wing at the house unit that we were on, and the CM, the guy running it, was like, "Oh, are you guys new?" And we're like, "No, we're come down from Franklin." He punched the air. He's like, "I've got staff. I've got experienced staff." And I was like, "That's a bit of a red flag." Well, what's the crack here? They went, "Oh, just got on B side. That's a bit naughty at the minute. You'll get used to it." And like, to be fair, on that first day, we weren't pushing them too much because you can't go in. You got to sort of assess the situation a little bit. But we were used to a jail where when you shouted, "Right, lads, bang up," the prisoners would kind of bang up. Or when you say like, "Right, dinner vape on the landings" or whatever, they'd be like, "All right, sorry, boss." So there was a little bit of mutual respect at Franklin. I mean, there was none of that there. Like, I remember we walked on the wing, and like the SO at the time was like, "Right, don't go on the threes because it's really bad up there at the minute. So just sort of leave them be. We'll go up there. We'll all go up there together when it's bang up." On the ones, you've got a few you need to watch out for. He's just punched Ricky or whatever, and you're like, "All right, no bother. Where's the rest of the staff?" He's like, "Right, Mrs. upstairs in the office. Good luck, lads." "All right, no bother." To go from like a jail where you're always practicing lines of sight, so you can always see another officer and they can always see you, and you almost never have a female officer by himself, not because they're worse or because they can't do it, but because there's an inherent risk to being like, "Oh, Mrs. in the office by herself. You two are going to do this. There's another one in the yard." You just kind of like, it's like a different world completely.
Were you rethinking your decision at that point?
There was a moment where I was like, "What have I done? What have I done?"
So what happened next?
I mean, we just went okay. You'd go to a prison, like, "All right, lads," and just look at you, and just go back to the game of chess or whatever. Cool, right? I'll move on. You go to the office to introduce yourself to the officer in there, and there's like 5 prisoners surrounding the computer, and she's just like, what am I supposed to do here? And they're all on like YouTube and that. And you're like, yeah, what are you supposed to do? You go down. I remember walking past the prisoner's cell on the tubes just when I was sort of like getting acquainted with the layout, and I looked in and he was watching a film that was like still on in the cinema. I can't even remember what the film was, and I was like, "You shouldn't have that." All right, fair enough. That's how it is here. And the first maybe 3 or 4 days, there was no like significant incidents for us. And then on day 4, Friday, was it Saturday? It was a Friday or a Saturday. They were all drunk. All the prisoners had been all absolutely
I
smashed.
shouldn't be laughing.
No, but like it is almost comical. Like the only time I'd ever seen Hooch was at Christmas, really, at Frankland. You know, there's a few of the older prisoners sitting around playing poker with matchsticks, you know, whatever they represented, and having a few drinks out of a can. And you know, you kind of went, it's Christmas. Don't give us bother. We're not going to give you bother. It's Christmas. Whatever we find in the meantime, if you're stupid enough to let us find it, then more fool yous. As opposed to like them just walking around like blazingly drinking like some of the strongest alcohol you've ever, like the way that they make alcohol now, they've got like whole distilling methods using like plastic bins and tubing and kettles and cling film, and they make alcohol. Like we tested some alcohol, it was like 71%.
Woo!
And they're sitting there drinking it like mixed with orange juice or energy drink if they can get it or whatever. And it's a bunch of 20-year-old, 21-year-old, 22, you know, young lads, all from the same kind of background, all from the same kind of area. Some of them who shouldn't be mixing with each other, getting full of vodka Red Bull, basically, and whatever else they can get their hands on. And, you know, when you just kind of get a sense, you're like, I think something's going to go wrong here. And it did, weirdly enough. When it came to bang up, I'm like, right, lads, that's bang up, that's 5 o'clock. And then like, just no one moved. You know what I mean? And this was on 1, and you know, it got to a point where I think it was like 10-6, and we've got like 3 prisoners behind the door. And what you're gonna do? You're gonna fight 60 prisoners to get them in the cell. You know what I mean? Like, what's the point? So we just kind of walked around like, you want to bang up? And they went, nah. Carry on drinking. You know, all right, cool. I'll come and see you again in 5 minutes. Just going around asking people to just go behind the doors, and they're like, nah. And it just got to a point where all the other wings finally managed to get banged up, and there was about 100 officers. You know, every officer in the jail was on the wing. Like, right, let's bang up. That's enough. And most of them went all right. And then my first restraint at Woodhill was this kid. He was about 21 years old. He was about 5'4", and he was off his head, absolutely smashed. And he was like, I'm not banging up. And you could hear all the other prisoners had already banged up, like banging on the door, like, you know, like gearing him up and that. And then I was like, right, come on. I like tapped him on the arm, and he just started swinging. So I think me, the lad had come down with, both grabbed an arm, and then about 10 other officers kind of like tentatively made their way towards it, because I think you can only get punched in the face so many times before you think, I don't want to get involved. There was some great staff there who did get involved. You know, they were like first ones to jump on the scene, but I mean, that was the first like incident. It was a Friday night. They were all smashed. Couldn't get them behind the door. Ended up going into his cell, putting him in his cell, relocating him. Doing the whole. I don't know if you've experienced it in the States, but I imagine you've heard about it here. Just a full relocation. You basically put them into an arm lock, put them into a leg lock, and push off them to get out the cell. And a lot of the lads have been having that done to them since they were 15 years old, so they know how to get up like instantly. Like the point where you're in training and someone's doing it to you, so you can see how it feels. You're like, oh my god. And then you do it to this lad who's had it done to him basically his entire adult life. Before you've even stood up, he's turned around and he's facing you again. And he's just, like, what am I supposed to do here? And I think he chucked his stereo at us. He did it. He grabbed a speaker and then he dropped it, and then he grabbed his actual like stereo and just launched it. And he just went flying out of the cell, hit the railing. We just backed out and shut the door. And I remember in the morning I was in, and he was on his cell bed. He said, "Oh, boss, do you know where my stereo is?" I do. Yeah, it's down the bottom of the stairs, mate. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. It was just every day. That was just the part and parcel of Woodhill. I think we did have a little respite because it was my birthday week, so it was my 3rd week there. There was a lockdown search. So every single prisoner in the jail, locked up, dedicated search teams from all over the country coming in to help. And then there was something like 10 teams who were permanently in kit, so always in the body armour and the riot shield, to go in and remove any prisoners who were being shipped out or who were refusing to have their cell searched. And I think we must have shipped out about 20 other prisoners from the wing I was working on, just to try and break up the sort of gang culture and calm down the affiliations that were going on there and make it a bit of a safer place for the staff. Because I think it was only about 5 days before we turned up that there was about 8-on-1 assault on a prisoner, and he'd got slashed up quite badly. So they were just trying to like calm that down. And I do remember at the time thinking, Like, basically, there was about 3 observation panels left in the jail because the prisoners had smashed them all out because they didn't want to be in the cell all week. I get it. I don't want to be in my cell all week. I wouldn't want that. And, there was floodings. I remember I got called to a flood on 2 where it was on the top floor, and it was just like, in Jumanji when the river's like going down the street. And I remember looking at that and I was like, it's messed up. Like, how are they getting away with this? And like, so many nickings were given out. I think I personally only restrained about 3 or 4 prisoners in that week, because a lot of them, to be honest, were quite happy to go. It wasn't a safe prison at the time. I don't know about now, but from what I hear, it's not much better. And then at the end of the week, for their good behaviour, one of the governors awarded them all a can of Pepsi and a Mars bar of some variety. And that kind of set the tone for the way the prisoners were sort of placed over the officers there.
So you said you were trying to reduce the gang activity. So I know in the south of England, the Muslim gang is really strong. Has that strength reached up north yet?
I mean, I wouldn't say. I mean, not while I was there. Definitely not. I mean, there's still tacked offenders, and there are still Muslim gangs, but it's a lot more sort of broken up, because up the north we've got a lot of the Geordie lads, we've got a lot of Scousers, got a lot of Manx. There's quite a good little dynamic, I think, that kind of keeps everybody in check. Every now and again there might be overloaded with Scousers or Manx or whatever, or overloaded with Muslims, and it caused a bit of unrest on the wings, but it's not as prolific as down south. A lot of what we got up north was sort of overflow from these southern jails, where it's a lot of local lads who are in gangs, and they're trying to sort of break up that gang, so they send them as far away as possible. I mean, Frankland is about as far away from London as you can get before you hit Scotland.
And how are they treated when they get up north?
It sort of varies, to be honest. I mean, there's always going to be conflict within gangs. The Scousers. It used to be the Manx and the Scousers. That was the classic one. They used
Manx versus Scousers.
They hated each other, and then suddenly it kind of became Muslims versus everyone, and a very, very powerful group. It's not Muslims in a case of actual Muslim people. I do want to point that out. It's not the religion of Islam that's doing it. It's gangs. It's just gang members and violent people who are using money and violence to get where they want. It'll start with you're an 18-year-old lad. You've just got 30 years slapped on you. You've got no pals in the jail. Anybody you did know who's in the jail might already be in something or other, a different gang, a bit of trouble, moving jail, whatever. And then suddenly, you've got quite a guy who's well respected coming to you and saying, "Oh, look, you need anything, give me a call. Oh, do you need some trainers? Have you got clothes? Have you got canteen? Have you got vapes?" And you just sort of indoctrinated a little bit. Look, you convert, we'll look after you. You become a Muslim, you're one of us. You're fine, you're looked after. We used to get a lot of lads who'd come to Frankland from those situations and go straight back to eating bacon for breakfast. You know what I mean? They're not Muslims. They're just, a lot of them are just kids, really.
Yeah, because I just watched Tommy Robinson describe his prison experience.
Okay, I can tell you about Tommy Robinson's prison experience, but go on, tell me what he said.
So he said that you've got a lot of people from all races are converting to the Muslim gang for protection because it's the biggest gang.
All right, I'll give him that. He's not wrong there.
Yeah.
But he could have easily got that off Google, because Tommy Robinson's prison experience was going straight onto a protected witnesses unit.
Yeah.
Basically straight onto where the supergrasses of the world are.
Yeah.
And not associating with any other prisoner for months until he was released.
Because he said that because he said that he would have been killed if he went to the general population by the Muslim
he would have been killed on a wing with Muslims, maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
But his perception of the prison service is going to be blinkered by the fact that he didn't associate with anybody from the prison service who wasn't an officer.
Yeah, yeah.
When you actually, I've seen and heard and had prisoners report horrendous things that have been done to them by gangs. Now, there was a prisoner who was a cleaner on one of the wings I was working on, and he got in a little bit of debt, and 8 Muslim prisoners went into a cell and beat him up and him with a broom handle.
What?
And that's not Muslim, is it? That's not Islam. That's gang violence. That's just bullying and gang violence.
That's hardcore. Has that happened a lot?
That's the only instance of that I've heard of. I mean, I don't know what it's like in America. You hear horror stories, but as far as I always dealt with, as far as goes, pretty much all of the sexual encounters I ever heard of between prisoners was more or less consensual in the UK prison system.
We've had a few people tell us about prisoners, who've got drugs packed inside them.
Yeah.
And then other prisoners will like hold them down and extract the drugs from inside them. Do you hear anything about that?
I know a lot of prisoners who've had things packed inside them.
Yeah.
We had a lad who had a phone packed for about 3 weeks, and every time he'd get it out on a night, and by the time you were in the cell, he'd have it back up again. So, I know that it is a method of entry and exit for drugs.
Yeah.
But I've always been under the impression that a lot of the time when drugs are packed, it's willingly.
Yeah,
or for money or something like that. It's not a case of being held down and extracted. It's a case of...
Yeah, I mean, it's the common way to just transport contraband around prison.
Yeah.
But there's some stories I've come in of, rivalries, and if they think they're tougher than this guy, they can just take it, basically.
Yeah, that's bullying. It's the same thing. You'll have seen it in jail yourself. You've got top of the pack, and then a lot of what jail runs on is goodwill.
Yeah.
Like, prisoners vastly outnumber staff, and there has to be goodwill shown by the officers to the prisoners, and there has to be goodwill shown by the prisoners to the officers, and a lot of that is understanding that there is hierarchy. A lot of the time, if something seriously needed doing or seriously needed changing, or the officers were getting pushed to a point where the goodwill was very, very limited, you kind of had to go to the people at the top of the chain and say, look, if you guys don't get control on this, you're the ones who are going to miss out. Because you'll be separated, you'll have things taken off you, you'll be banged up all day. And then they'd clamp down on it.
So what are the methods that the gangs are using to get the contraband in?
Officers is definitely a method. There's corrupt officers. They're bringing in things.
Yeah, we interviewed an officer. They were paying him £500 a package, and he could bring in up to 3 packages a day. But he got busted, and he ended up in prison himself.
Good. It's one of those things. I understand that prisoners are going to be prisoners. You accept that. You kind of feel that officers shouldn't be. So, as far as that, I don't blame prisoners for making hooch, trying to get drugs in. To be honest, if they've got a little bit of weed and smoke it in their cells, I'm kind of thrilled because there's no violence. Nobody wants to fight when they're stoned. But
it's the spice making them all wig out.
Spice is ruthless. See, when they've got a good batch of weed and you can smell it, you don't mind too much.
Yeah.
So long as they're not taking the piss. So long as they're not taking the mick.
Yeah.
When they've got spice and they're on it, you see some ridiculous things.
What's the craziest things you've seen?
I've seen loads of things. I've seen prisoners slashing themselves to pieces, slashing themselves to pieces, trying to get things off.
Do they even know they're doing it, or is it just they're just whacked out their minds?
I think. I've only had it second hand, and I was whacked out my mind. I don't understand how they're sitting there smoking it like that. And I know some will tell you, "Oh, it's not that bad," or everyone's got a different experience.
Build a tolerance over time.
Of course they do. But you never know how strong it's going to be.
Yeah.
I've seen prisoners having seizures and having almost unreal levels of strength from smoking spice, to the point where there's these little kids who are about 5 foot and made of spaghetti. They're lifting you off them when you're trying to hold down an arm, and where is this strength coming from? You know what I mean? How have you got this? You're built like a child, and you've lifted me with one arm. I've seen some crazy things.
Do they remember what they've done when they come around from it?
Some prisoners have said, "Oh yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what I was thinking." But then sometimes you speak to a prisoner and they forget that they've just punched you in the face. Or
So what about the methods of drones, dead pigeons, things like that?
Dead pigeons is a classic one, or dead rats or whatever, or tennis balls thrown over the wall with those dog walking things. You put a tennis ball in it and you launch it for the dog. Fill a tennis ball full of drugs and just launch it over the fence.
Yeah.
You can stand, 200 yards away and be gone before anybody's even noticed. I've seen that happen a couple of times, actually. I remember one time we were on the exercise yard and it just started raining tennis balls. And as we were calling for, package thrown over, let's get these before the lads can, this prisoner comes up and punches my colleague. Obviously knowing I've got to go and turn and deal with that. And suddenly, all those tennis balls are gone. No, where could they be? Half the jail turns up to assist, the DSD and everything, and you get all the prisoners too. I don't think we recovered 1 gram of whatever was in those packages.
So it sounds like quite a precise thing. If you're thinking about just things getting thrown over a wall, tennis balls, dead pigeons, dead rats, whatever, You think, how on earth is this going to get to the right person at the right time? But it sounds like they've got it really like.
Well, it's gonna be really coordinated, isn't it? They've all got
Yeah.
phones, and I mean, Woodhill's supposed to have like phone blockers, but prisoners still had phones. You get a drone delivering. If you got a phone, you can get Wi-Fi extenders.
So you're just guiding the drone on your own phone, basically.
You can. I've known of prisoners who will send a text to their friend and get a delivery to their window like 10 minutes later.
What, a drone?
Yeah, and you can't police that. What are you supposed to do?
So by the time you see it, they've already got it inserted.
Yeah. By the time you've clocked on that they've got it, unless you're very, very lucky.
So what if you got footage of a drone delivery? Couldn't you say, look, we've got this evidence against you now? You got a write-up or a charge or something?
I didn't know they were delivering anything. I don't control the drone.
There's no proof of what it is.
It was probably somebody for YouTube trying to get like prisoners or something.
Oh yeah, prison footage.
Yeah. If you want to get rid of that kind of thing, it's very, very easy. You put a net over the exercise yard. You put a mesh over the windows.
Yeah.
And, I remember asking that question at the time, why don't we just put a net over the exercise yard? It'll catch whatever's thrown. No, it's against the human rights. How? I remember I knew when those tennis balls had been thrown over on that occasion, I knew exactly who had them. I knew exactly where they'd gone to, and I knew that we were never going to find them. And of course, the cell was searched and all the relevant cells were searched and nothing was found. But I did go and say to him, look, is there anything there that's going to get somebody hurt? And he went, no.
So those tennis balls have a combination of the brown, the green, and the white, or is there certain?
I don't know many prisoners that really enjoy getting a bit of white.
Okay.
Because
more of a recreational.
It is a recreational.
Nightclub thing.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're sitting in a cell, it's not really something you want.
Buzzing around.
Yeah. I mean, I know when we did see things that were white, it was normally ground up prescription medication.
Yeah.
But I don't know that very often they really wanted to get white drugs thrown in.
Yeah.
Green was. I remember after that, the wing stunk of green. Just for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, absolutely stunk.
Where I was at, it was the brown. They were injecting the brown.
I think
is that not as popular now?
Not that I've seen.
Yeah.
I know that there's still. I know it's going to be different in your local jails and your sort of revolving door jails where you've got prisoners in and out every weekend and they can access it on the streets and whatever else. And they'll be out on a Monday and then by the Friday they'll be arrested again, plugged up. That's
because the green stays in your piss, doesn't it, for a month?
Yeah.
But the brown is gone within a few days.
Yeah, 48 hours, I think.
And I think there was a time when the spice didn't show at all, but have they managed to get spice tests now?
I can't remember at Woodhill ever seeing a drug test being done.
Right.
I know that it happened at Frankland.
We were always getting called out for P tests.
I don't think the resources were there.
And then you got the guard just Peter gazing, and you got to perform right in front of him, so you can't substitute it with someone else's.
Yeah.
It's quite stressful to be put on the spot like that.
Did you ever get caught?
I never did anything in prison. I was
Good answer.
I was doing
Good
it before.
answer.
That was my wake-up call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing as well. I mean, I know there's a lot of talk about rehabilitation and justice and punishment and that kind of thing. I think prison cannot rehabilitate you.
Yeah.
You can only you have to want to be rehabilitated. There's no course you can do, a program you can do.
I agree with that. I went on a self-education program or just read loads of books that my family and friends sent me, stuff like that helped me. But all around me, I just saw traumatized people getting re-traumatized by the environment and self-medicating with the brown to try and numb that pain out. About 80-90% of them were injecting the brown. About 2/3 had hepatitis C from sharing dirty needles, which was slowly killing them.
Yeah, it's a lot. I don't remember ever finding brown. Not personally.
Yeah.
I know I've caught a lot of them smoking spice, and I've seen them in some states.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, they're talking about what they dip the paper in. You don't know what they're smoking. You don't know what it is. There was a time when they were talking about it being brown or, when it was salvia and stuff. And you see them in some incredible states. Yeah. Awful. Impossible to describe to an extent because, one moment they'll be sort of, impossible to describe politely anyway. They'll be sitting there just off their chops, just dribbling and falling over. Then you pick them up and suddenly they're full of energy and they're violent and they're wanting to kick off. And then a minute later, they're trying to be your best pal in that. And it's just manic energy from drugs. And I remember that particular One when they were all smoking weed. I think the only person who got in trouble for it was the one lad who happened to be smoking a joint on the landing in front of me when they were smoking green. When I caught him on the landing directly in front of me, passing back and forward between the cell. And I kind of feel like what you do in your cell after bang up or over lunchtime, whatever, I can't kick off too much of that. You're in your cell, you're in your house essentially. We don't have the staff to police it. If you're going to do it directly in front of my face, that's absolutely taking the mick.
Yeah.
I think he's the only one that ever actually really got proper trouble for it.
So what was the most dangerous situation at Woodhill?
Loads. Honestly, there was loads. I remember going to an alarm bell on 3, and you got like 3 different phases of alarm. Right, you got your first alarm, which is general alarm. If you're an alarm bell response, you go and turn up and you help out, and if it gets resolved, you're fine. If the alarm bell response that turns up isn't enough, you call a second response, or if you think you're going to need more staff, you call a second response, which is your extra person. And if it's really going off, you call you all available. And that one on 3 was horrendous. I remember turning up and there was just prisoners and staff fighting everywhere. And I looked up to the 3's landing, the top floor, and there's 2 officers with their batons drawn, sort of shouting like, "Get back!" And there was a prisoner stood there with a knife, like a proper stabber in one hand, and like an extension cable or something in the other, like the Witch King from Lord of the Rings. He's always got that sword and the mace. That's what he was like. And I remember thinking that where do I go here? Where do I go first? And as I ran up onto the 2s, which is like the floor, obviously directly below the 3s, this prisoner had climbed over the railings on the 3s because he's got wind that the prisoners were coming up behind him. So he climbed over the railings and managed to get down to got down to the 2's landing. And just as he landed, he just landed in front of me with my baton out, and I was kind of stood there like, well, it's Christmas, innit? What am I supposed to do here? And I remember him sort of swinging, going to swing with a knife in his hand, and I hit him in the leg with a baton, and I sort of rugby tackled him. And I became aware that it was 2 people. I thought it was 2 officers helping me, and they just came and rushed him and started punching him. I was like, "All right, lads, calm down." I looked up and it was 2 prisoners, and I was like, "I've got this, lads." They're like, "No, it's all right, Burch." I was like, "No, it's fine. I need to be the one to have this." He's kind of get involved. Then 2 officers came and helped me, and got the weapons off him, and he was restrained. And I remember while we were holding him on the floor, another prisoner who I actually knew quite well, because it had all been kicking off already. It wasn't just about me. I wish I could be that big-headed and say they all loved me. But another prisoner came sprinting down the landing, obviously to do him in, what the plan was about the 3 of us on top of him. And literally right at this second, this kid, other officer, just sideswiped him. Took his legs out and just absolutely saved all of us from getting our heads filled in. And I remember there's blood everywhere, and there's a prisoner who's on the floor with he just had a knife in his hand, and you kind of sit there and you think, I should feel more adrenaline than I am feeling right now, because it did, to be completely honest, it kind of got to a point where you didn't really get a big hit from it. I remember the first time that I dealt with a one-on-one situation at Woodhill, there was a kid, a bloke there about my age. He was about 6'8". He was broader than I am tall. And I remember telling him, right, it's bang up. And he was like, I'm not banging up. No, it's bang up. No, I want to shower. It's 5:30. You've got to bang up. And he was like, what are you going to do about it? I was like, I'll make you if I have to. And he went, you're going to do that? I was like, yeah. Well, there's my cell there. I was like, yeah, there is your cell. Go to it. What are you going to? You come in the cell and fight me with it? No, you've insane. I do this for a job, not for fun, or whatever. It was something along those lines. And he was like, "Are you gonna?" It kept coming backwards and forwards. Are you gonna make me? I was like, "Yeah, I will." And I remember saying to him, "I'm not scared of you. Go back to your cell." And he just went, "All right." And I remember turning away. And I was like, oh my god, crumbling, my knees shaking like mad, trying not to.
Yeah, he was giving you a heart check, wasn't he?
Oh, proper. Beyond that, I remember taking that first step. Your knees almost buckling. I was like, I'm going to fall over. I feel like I'm going to pass out from the sheer adrenaline.
Yeah, but you had to maintain face.
Yeah, I can't walk away from that and then pass out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then by the time that had happened on the 3s, where I just nearly been slashed across the face, it's kind of all right, we'll deal with it. You know what I mean?
What were the worst injuries that happened to your colleagues?
Obviously there was the one who got stabbed in the neck. That was pretty significant. I worked with a lad who got a kettle full of boiling water chucked across his back, so he was scalded. He had a few months out the job.
What was the build up to that?
That was a dangerous wing. He went in the cell to remove his TV, I think it was, and got a kettle full of boiling water thrown over him, and that was that. The prisoner got restrained, taken to the seg. The officer got seriously burned. Potting, that's quite a significant, but more psychological than physical.
Just explain what that means.
The act of potting is basically filling any receptacle with body waste, fecal or urine, and throwing it over an officer or a prisoner. A prisoner can be potted. I've had a couple of colleagues get the full whack of poo and wee in the face. Christmas Eve one year, I was walking past a prisoner's cell and I got a cup full of urine in the side of the head.
You did?
Yeah, that was a...
Did you ever ascertain why he did that to you?
He was going through some kind of mental health thing. And I think the only time I ever saw him after that was on healthcare. You cannot hold a grudge, really, because if you do, you'll be out of a job very, very quickly. But...
Did you have to get a quick shower after that?
I didn't have time. We were that short staffed.
Didn't have time?
I gave my face a quick
Just
wash.
wipe it off?
Yeah, literally just took my jacket off and went back to work. I mean, that was a really weird one as well, because like psychologically there's that bit of you that's like, I want to go in and like punch his head in because he's just thrown way at me. And then the other party that goes, this is currently putting food on your table. Better not do that. You know.
What about deaths?
I've dealt with prisoners who've died of natural causes. I've worked with prisoners who've had attempted murders. I've dealt with a lot of prisoners who've come very close to death with for various self-inflicted ways. I think it was my first day off in about 10 days. There was a prisoner who'd actually successfully killed himself on the One's Landing. And I remember my friend was working that day, who was best man at my wedding, and he said he will never get it out of his head because when he opened the door, the prisoner had been sat against it. And so there's no way he could have been counted. There's no way he could have been checked on a night because he was invisible. He'd been sat against it with a ligature tied from the sink to his neck. And he'd obviously been there for a few hours because when they opened the door, his body didn't even move. And they had to like crunch him open to give him CPR. And I think he wasn't long into a sentence, but he'd just been slapped with 34 years, I think. And he just kind of went, "No, I'm not doing that." I'd just been moved off that way, actually, because my cousin was on there. That's why I wasn't there. My cousin was a prisoner at the time. He's doing life for murder. And he, through sheer coincidence, ended up in the same jail as me. And I said, I cannot work with my cousin as a prisoner. It's not safe.
So, you met someone, a colleague. Is that something you can talk about? Is that something you don't want to talk about?
No, what do you mean, sorry?
Like got in a relationship.
Yeah,
is that private?
It's not private. It just didn't end very well. I went on detached duty there to Woodhill, and that's where I met my wife. We had a baby together. I remember the first time I actually met her was in the jail, and I thought she was an absolute idiot. She was only about 2 weeks in the job, and I was sitting there in the office, and I was doing some work, did some paperwork or whatever. And this prisoner comes in and says, "Oh, would you do me a favour? Would you, whatever it was, look at my spends or whatever?" I went, "Yeah, would you do me a favour? Actually, would you chuck that bin out just out there for me, just out the door?" "No, don't look like a cleaner." I was like, "Oh, don't look like a banker. I'm not checking your spends then." Come on, it's trying to build that a little bit. Like it's got to go both ways. What I mean?
Bit of flirtation.
A little bit of like this is my line.
Yeah.
Let's build that rapport. I know I'll annoy you a little bit, but I'll set my stall out. You'll know who I am. And he went, "You're not going to do it for me?" I was like, "You're not going to do that for me?" And he went, "Well, I'm only asking you for a favour." I was like, "So am I." And he went, "Well, I'm not doing it." I was like, "Well, me neither, I guess." And he turns to her, he went, "Miss, will you do it?" She went, "Yeah." Well, you just absolutely undermined me immediately. You'd made me look an idiot. And he walked out and went, "Miss, don't ever undermine me like that again," whoever. And about 3 or 4 days later, she came up to me and said, "I'm really sorry about that." I spoke to him, and I said I wasn't going to do that for him again. And I was like, "All right, no worries." And we kind of sort of grew from there. I remember once she actually got sexually assaulted by a prisoner.
No.
And I think it was before it was before it had blossomed into something. And was quite significant. And the manager obviously knew we were friends, but that's all there was at that point. He went, "Oh, Burch, can you help me move this prisoner to this other wing?" And I went, "Yeah, what's happened?" And he sort of told me. And I said, "Oh, what's his crack?" "Oh, well, he's a nonce anyway. Attempted murder of his girlfriend, admitted to sexually assaulting a teenager." I said, "Oh, so what's the plan?" He went, "I'm going to let 5 know." And he got on the phone to 5 and to that house unit. But be careful about how much I actually say here.
I imagine that he accidentally fell down the stairs.
You wouldn't believe it, but when we got him back to the new cell, he drew a weapon on us. Or I thought he was going to anyway. He reached into his pocket and refused to take his top off. And then I think he lunged at me as well or something. I'd have to look at the paperwork to remember the details. But
yeah.
And any allegations that he was assaulted can't be true. But I do remember when we left that cell, a lot of prisoners went to his door and started shouting nonce at him.
Yeah.
So I guess they'd already somehow gotten the message.
That's terrible. How did he trick her into his cell or something?
No, he went up and he grabbed her.
He just literally went up and grabbed her. Did he have a weapon or chokehold or?
No, just grabbed her and.
Yeah. Oh my God. I can't imagine the trauma of her having, going through that.
Yeah, me neither, really.
Yeah, it's really horrendous. Did she quit after that, or did she come back?
No, she's still in now.
Good grief, that's brave then, isn't it?
Wow. Officers get a really hard time now,
Yeah.
and CMs and SOs, and they all say, "Oh, they're losing control of the jails, and they're running it into the ground or whatever."
Yeah.
The people who really want to be taking a look at themselves is the government, because it's absolutely disgraceful. There should never ever be a situation where a female officer is left alone with prisoners, and that's not a disparagement on female officers. That's the risk of being a female officer surrounded by people who have committed crimes, who may have committed crimes of a sexual nature, and suddenly, bingo, there's a woman here, and it's us. And
was it the government disorganisation that contributed to you quitting?
No, that was a mixture of messing up my own life, going away down south for a long time, and then being sent back up north when I had a 7-month pregnant fiancée.
So you were in a prison down south? Or?
Oh, I was at Woodhill. That's where we met.
Oh, Woodhill, yeah, of course.
And then I went back to Frankland, and
Yeah.
I couldn't go back to Woodhill, so I said, "Well, I'm gonna have to go then, because that's where my future wife is."
Yeah.
Because we were engaged at the time.
Yeah.
It's a shame, I absolutely loved that job. I'd gone back tomorrow if they phoned up and said, "Look, we need help." But it's just gotten worse. It's gotten worse since then.
That's it. What have you heard?
Well, I obviously know 3 of the officers who were seriously assaulted back in April at Frankland.
Okay, do you want to describe what happened to them?
I don't, because I know that it's still an ongoing thing.
Okay.
And I can't call anybody's judgment on that one. And the last thing I'd want is for them not to get justice.
Yes. Makes sense.
When it all comes out, I'll give you a call and let you know.
I'll just say that there was some stabbings and there was some people getting hot fluids thrown on them.
Yeah, there was a serious life-changing assault.
Yeah.
Since then, I know 3 officers. I know 1 officer, and I know of 2 other officers who have been seriously assaulted with a bladed weapon. Not so long ago, I know a female officer who not so long ago got taken hostage. It's just absolutely ruthless. I mean, if you've seen the stats, it's 29 assaults a day last year on staff.
And according to some news reports, a lot of that has been committed by the Muslim gang. Is that correct?
It's difficult because a lot of it's being done by younger offenders.
Yeah. And
a lot of the younger offenders are coming in and converting to Muslim gangs because they haven't got long-standing gang affiliation.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's happening down south where the jails are shorter staffed.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it's happening when you're short-staffed in a Muslim jail, which is a heavily populated Muslim area where the gang violence is rife. It's very easy to say, "Oh, it's the Muslims." But if it was the other way around and the southern jails were very heavily staffed and the northern jails were very low staffed, it may be, "Oh, it's Geordies."
Yeah.
I can't pin it all and say, "Oh, look, it's all Muslims."
What I noticed in America was whatever gang had the most numbers, they committed the most.
Exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah, and the gang with the least numbers would get brutalised by the ones with the most numbers.
Yeah, and it's no different here, but it just happens that the gang with the least numbers is now the prison officers. and
Right.
there's no experience, very little experience. The ones that are still in, they've been doing it for years. My hat goes off to you. God bless you, because a lot of them are very hardworking.
So do you think the UK prison system is doomed?
It's beyond doomed. You don't even need to hear the stories. You can look at the numbers. I trace everything back to 2005, not because that's where it started, but that's where there was an article put out by the Minister of Prisons at the time, and he basically said the prison service is in crisis. The officers are in so much danger. The prisoners are in danger. There was about 2,500 assaults on staff that in 2005. There was 10,500 last year. There was 20,000 prisoner-on-prisoner assaults.
Wow.
2,500 of those were severe enough to require hospitalisation.
So it's completely out of control.
It's devastated. It's absolutely devastated. How do you attract somebody into that job? A lot of the people that have been drawn into this job now are young, naive, almost like I was in a way, because I kind of thought I was going to go and change the world. Graduates who are being told, oh, well, you'll be a manager in a few years. You hear stories, don't know how much of it is true, but you hear stories that they're being hired from abroad because it basically helped people get a visa. I've worked with some prison officers who can barely speak English to a point, and some of them, to be honest, cause real problems. And that's not like African countries necessarily, Eastern Europe. Some of it's absolutely devastated. And the cost of the prison service. Right? I don't know what your tax situation is, what your earning situation is, but we sat down in my house and worked out that every single person in my house doesn't pay enough tax to cover one prisoner for the year.
There's a huge amount of money being made by these corporations like G4S, Serco, etc.
Yeah, and I know it was debunked that Theresa May's husband was a major shareholder in G4S, but it was also shown that there was about 4 other MPs that were. Before you even think about G4S, you got to think about, who provides the toilet paper, who provides the bed sheets, who provides
hundreds of different contractors,
and there's I think a few MPs are a few fingers in some different pies. That's all I would like to say.
It's a racket on the taxpayers.
But you can't sit and say, oh, it's Labour, it's Tory, because if you can go back 20 years and just watch it go downhill since then. There's 21,000 more prisoners now, 1,000 less prison officers, and somehow it's double the cost.
In America, the private prisons kick down tens of millions a year to both parties. So whichever party gets it. And the contracts are in the tens of billions. Yeah, I mean,
prisoners in America not basically used as slave labour, essentially.
Oh, yeah, there's, 2.5 million in prison in America. And they can even make them work for free or give them like 10 cents an hour, 50 cents to 50 cents an hour was the range in Arizona.
I mean, it's not hugely different here. I mean, it might be like, I think the prisoners they don't get less than minimum wage. I can't remember the exact figures. If you don't work, you get like 50 pence a day.
Yeah.
If you do work, you get like £3.50 a day.
Yeah.
But then you can always get money sent in by family. And
so what was it like for you leaving the service then?
It was heartbreaking, to be honest, because, all my closest friends are prison officers. A lot of the people I care about are prison officers.
You bond through the intense times.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, 99% of those people could call me tomorrow and say, "Oh, can you come and help me?" And I'd do my best to do it. And also, there's that thing of how do I ever go and do something else? Because you're going from an intensely violent and dangerous world where, I remember seeing one of my colleagues nearly get thrown off the Threes Landing.
How many prisoners had him?
2. And then there was 7 other came over, and I was like, he's about to get killed, and started running up the stairs, and the 7 other prisoners actually saved him.
Did they?
Yeah.
Do you know why the 2 had grabbed him?
Yeah, because he was telling one of them to get out of the shower, and they ended up scrapping, and his mate came in to help.
They were going to throw him off the balcony.
And that's a 50-foot drop, man.
Ooh.
And then you go from that to, I'm in sales now again. I work from home.
Don't you feel safer though?
I feel, I'm bored.
But this goes back to like the very first question I asked you. I said, look, you're just like a likable, calm person. Why would you want to go into that fire, put your life on the line for the government?
I don't know. I think a certain type of person becomes a prison officer. I think some of the, to be honest, most of the best prison officers I ever worked with came from very little and worked in jobs like army and that kind of, sort of.
Well, there was a time when it was like nearly all ex-army.
Yeah, and so
then it changed over, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean the Northeast we've got a few that were like ex-pit miners.
Yeah,
hard. Anybody who's willing to work hard and doesn't come from a lot of money. There's a huge, when you're dealing with these like graduates and people who come from quite affluent backgrounds who've never been punched in the face. They cause you quite a lot of problems sometimes, and that's not a stain on all of them, because some very, very good graduates, but a lot of people with very little life experience.
So for young people with little life experience who are watching this, who are thinking about joining, what advice would you give them?
I'm never going to be one of those people who say don't join the prison service, because the prison service needs good people. You need to be able to take people as they come, though. You can't judge them based on what they've done. You just judge them based on who they are, and you have to try and treat them all the same. If you like to have a bit of a crack, a bit of a laugh, it's one of the best places to go. It's an absolutely phenomenal job. I'd recommend it to a lot of people. You just got to not be afraid to get your hands dirty. And to be honest, it might be a good idea to get punched in the face once or twice before you go in, just to get used to it.
And is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion to the viewers who've been watching this for the last 2 hours?
I mean, the only thing I would really say that I would really push for at this point is we need to try and make staff safer for everyone. Absolutely everyone. There's nearly 100,000 prisoners. There's 22,000, 23,000 prison officers. Not nearly enough, but it needs to be made a safer place. At the moment, there is a petition to try and get the prison service retirement age back down to 60. Just one little bonus that might make people go into the job for the right reasons and stay in the job for the right reasons. So if you can, please sign that. Help the voices get heard. It could go on to something bigger, maybe bringing back a bit more safety. Thanks for having me on.
So we'll include the petition in the description box below this video. We'll put a link down there for Matthew's mum's book as well. Incentivise her to hopefully come on the podcast. And just let us know in the comments what you thought. If anyone wants to reach out to you or follow you on socials, do you do anything like that, or is it all private?
Just because I've got kids, I try not to.
Yeah, I hear you, 100%. No worries. All right, thank you for watching, folks. Let us know in the comments what you thought, and we will see you in the next one. Oh, well done, man. Brilliant.
Oh,
yeah, nice one.
To be honest,
Excellent.